Hello, YouTube. Welcome to the Stratosphere Lounge. It is the 17th of April, 2025. I'm your host, Bill Whittle. It is good to be here. Seems like we're doing a little better, a little less stressful lately. We are cranking out these story mechanics episodes. We'll be posting the third one. We'll premiere the third one on the show tonight. I have to say, I think of all the ones that we got from the micro shoot, this is probably the thinnest one, but nevertheless, fun 7-8 minutes, 5-6, something like that. The next one, which is being edited now, is on public speaking. That's a lot of fun, so that's great. So the plan is to just get these babies edited and posted as fast as possible. Put some groceries up on the shelves there for the YouTube channel, and then get in contact with the next guest, which I haven't talked to him in a while yet, but I'm hoping will be Gary Sinise, and turn this into an ongoing thing. I had a real good opportunity to speak with the Strata folks on Monday night about the overall strategy here. So I think the general plan for turning story mechanics views into BillWhittle.com memberships is basically saying, hey, we're finally on offense. Last time we were on offense, we just relaxed, and Trump is moving as fast as he can. I think the main point I'm trying to make, and I'll obviously get this a lot more succinct, but I think the thing is, we're very good at criticizing woke entertainment and woke content, and we're good at criticizing Obamacare, and we're good at criticizing everything. What we're not particularly good at, that I've seen, is providing alternatives. And so I think the way you sell story mechanics is to say, here's a chance to get people who not only aren't on our side necessarily politically, but aren't into political stuff at all, but they are into filmmaking. A lot of people are into celebrities and interviews, movie making, and a lot of people are really interested in making videos these days, especially young people. So, come for the story mechanics, stay for the character building, because if I can get people to listen to Mike Rowe for an hour or two, or Gary Sinise, or John Voight, we don't have to talk politics. That's the entire point. They will be getting lessons in character building from the actors. Not only the actors are talking about the characters, but the actors talking about themselves. So there you go. So I am real excited about that. I've got both of those teed up. Don't have anything in particular to talk about other than the general mockery of the chicks in space thing. We didn't do a segment on that this week on Right Angle, but we did talk about it on our backstage show, and I just kind of groaned my way through it. I think we did the backstage show either the day of the landing or the day after the landing. And man, I actually can't believe how much flack they're taking, but they seem to deserve it, What's her name? Is it Gail, or Oprah's friend, talking about how she did just exactly what Alan Shepard did, minus the instrumentation, the risk, and the training. This whole, we're astronauts, and go up into space and get in contact with the divine feminine is like, I'm pretty sure the divine feminine doesn't build rockets. I think that's kind of a Father God kind of a guy. So Sycopolin in YouTube says the abbreviation of chicks in space is CIS. Another word that needs to be removed from the language. Yeah, I just wanted to ask Gail, while you were flying your flight, since it wasn't a ride, it was a flight, what instruments were you monitoring? And what were you about to do if you had a stuck attitude control thruster? Those kind of things. But the whole divine goddess thing is just, sit around our campfires burning, wood cow pies and picking parasites off each other and thrashing, maize. We can make enough, grain meal to survive another day. What Dave's Real Area 51 wants to know, what the F does define feminine mean? I don't know, but I think it's got something to do with standing against the patriarchy. It's interesting that the patriarchy built the rocket and that the patriarchy funded the rocket. All of those power chicks out there talking about, girl bosses and all this stuff, all of them riding for free because a man wrote the check for not only for the spacecraft but for the particular ride. So I was telling Stephen Scott, as he was, because I hadn't seen any of the footage at the time. Scott was just describing all this stuff to me, and the more he talked about it, the more the more I wasn't even like upset. I was just like checking out. I was just going like this. It's like, and after about 5 minutes of description, I said, I realize now that being the only male on that flight would be Bill Whittle's special hell. This would be my Twilight Zone hell. Why is divine Marusha Dark always the contrarian? Why is divine goddess mockable, but men as gods is not? Well, because divine goddess sounds silly, but men as gods is, there's a fair amount of evidence for, reaching for the moon and grabbing it. It's generally not a chick kind of a deal, man. So, and I'm not particularly afraid to say that. So my special hell would have been being on that flight, Get 4 minutes of weightlessness and they're doing a group hug. It'd be like, no, I don't think so. I think I know there were talks when Scott was talking about them. Somebody on the way up said, "Oh my God," and somebody else said, "Oh my goddess," and I just thought, I'm ejecting. I'm getting out. I'm ejecting. You're not wearing a spacesuit. Yeah, I know that. I'm opening the hatch. Bill, you can't open the hatch. Nobody's got suits on the inside. If you open the hatch, you'll lose the entire crew. Sacrifice I'm willing to make. And I don't know if this is true or not. Scott reported it. He said that on the way down there was a bit of screaming when they thought the parachutes should have opened already, and they didn't. And I just thought, yeah, I'm bailing. I'm getting up. I'm walking to the hatch and I'm just jumping. My take on it was, I would, if I'd been on that flight, I would have waited till I got to get some air. Jocko Hooligan in YouTube. Now, if I'd been on that flight, I would have been the last guy out, and I would have waited. I would. They just said, "Come out." I said, "Just stay here," and I would have waited and waited and waited until everybody had gone away, and then I would have like I gave this careful thought. Then I'd have like a Jeep about 3/4 of a mile away in the middle of the desert, just a green Jeep with a like an Air Force, just an airman, first class driver, just sitting there. Green Jeep, 3/4 of a mile out in the desert. And then after all of this fluff was over, I would just get up and I'd just walk. I'd walk across the desert, It's sunrise. Just walking across the desert to get to my Jeep to ride back so I can do the paperwork. And if anybody said, "How was your flight?" "How was your flight?" "Nominal." That's what I would just say. Nominal. Then I'd start walking. Like Chuck Yeager, exactly. Dave Big Booty's got it exactly. Nominal. Flight was nominal. Anything you want to add to that? Nope. Pretty much nominal flight. And I would have taken with me something. They've got these apps for the iPhone or something. I would have at least an iPhone altimeter. I'd have some kind of instrumentation. I'd need some kind of instrumentation, just so I could say, So, yeah, I wonder what would have happened if I don't even know if they have reaction control thrusters on that. I don't guess they do they? No, it's just pretty much just bottom heavy capsule, and there it goes. Lots of people asking, there's a number of people saying that this was obviously faked, that the graphics of the launch and the ship didn't look real, and then a lot of these conspiracy guys saying the whole thing was fake, saying, how come there's no scorching on it like there is on the Dragon capsule? How come there's no scorching? It was obviously faked. It's like, man, probably because it never got much hotter than 200, 300 degrees centigrade, maybe 350, something like that, instead of 3,000. That's why. Well, the Dragon capsule comes with this fiery entry. How come this didn't go? Because it didn't get to 17,800 miles an hour. That's why I don't know what their top speed was, but honestly, I think it was. I can't imagine what their top speed on the way up was in terms of knots. But yes, I mean, it's so much less energy required to do a suborbital flight. The Redstone rocket was just essentially a somewhat lengthened V2. I mean, the Redstone was a direct descendant of the V2. But they needed the Atlas to get a Mercury capsule into orbit, and I don't know. I thought the whole thing was just really, it's obviously I would like to have taken the ride myself, and if somebody had said to me, "How does it feel to be crew on this ride?" my response would have been, "I wasn't crew. I was ballast. I might as well have been a couple of sacks of wet cement." But as a sack of wet cement goes, it was a lifelong dream come true. And I am very, very grateful to be able to say that I made it into space when it was basically my entire life's goal. So we got to get those memberships rolling in when we start really cranking over this thing, because I'm going to have to take one of those rides somewhere, I think, just so I could, die in peace. I was a passenger. Yes, I was a sack of cement. I was a passenger. You're not a pilot if you fly Southwest from L.A. to, Fort Lauderdale. That doesn't make you a pilot. Makes you a passenger. So anyway, yes, how much to send Bill into space? I think it's hundreds of thousands of dollars, and I'm sure there's a long, long waiting list. Bezos is just not going to help my chances of getting a Blue Origin ride. But I just think it's such a weak effort. They finally launched New Glenn, and I don't know when we're going to see the next one, but I bet it's going to be 250K. Puff. They ought to send me up for the publicity value. Oh, come on. Lost my chain of thought. It'll come back to me. How were they able to open the door from the inside, Ozzy Crosby says? Because they did. I don't know if you noticed this, but they not only did they reproduce Alan Shepard's flight, but they also reproduced Gus Grissom's flight, because they opened the hatch too early. Although, by all accounts, when I finally got to do this for Apollo 11, the big discussion about Gus Grissom was also a suborbital flight on Liberty Bell 7, I think it was, and his hatch blew before the capsule had been stabilized with the floats, and so the capsule sank, and he damn near drowned. He was really, really, really close. But for a long, long time, there was pretty much the belief that Grissom had panicked and blown the bolts. But his buddy, I want to make sure I get the right one of them. Might have been Shepard, might have been Cooper. I might have been any of them, to be honest. It wasn't Glenn. But one of the guys, after Grissom was, maybe it was Scott Carpenter, come to think of it. Anyway, after Grissom is dealing with the weight of being accused of having blown the hatch early. Was it Schirra? It was Wally Schirra on Sigma 7. Yeah, so Wally Schirra goes up on Sigma 7, and he does a bunch of orbits of the Earth, and they bring the capsule back down, and apparently when you blow the hatch, it kicks back in such a way that it produces a bruise. And Grissom didn't have that bruise. And that was compelling evidence for the Mercury guys that Grissom didn't actually have his hand on the handle when the hatch blew. So it was Schirra who stayed in the capsule till they got it on board the carrier deck, and then he apparently blew the hatch on purpose, and he got this bruise, and basically proved that that his buddy Gus Grissom didn't do it. This one, you say goodnight. Astrosea. All right, have a lovely show for the rest of the night, y'all. I'm finishing at all at work tomorrow. Cheers. Good night, Bill. Good night to you too, Astro. And I think we saw you over at on the Twitch stream, catching the groovy pregame show. So thanks for being here, and we really appreciate it. Okay, so I guess we might as well just go ahead and get into the meat and taters of the evening. So before we go ahead and get into the forum questions, let's premiere the third segment of Story Mechanics with Mike Rowe, which is all queued up for once and ready to go. Marisha Dark says, to be fair, Bezos' wife is a trained pilot, and Alicia Bowe is a NASA aerospace engineer. Both were on it. Real question, why does the ship look like a dick? Well, it's because the diameter of the capsule is larger than the diameter of the rocket in terms of what it needed, so that's what you get. Rockets often have a enlarged upper stage, and we'll just leave it at that. Okay. So, it was Shira. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just gonna fire this off. Nothing particularly special. Like I said, I think of all the segments that we pulled from the micro interview, I think this one is probably I want to say the weakest one. Just I think probably the least interesting one. Not even interesting. I don't know. I just felt this one was not quite as good as the others. But this one, we did the hook last time, didn't we? Yes, we did the hook on Monday. Okay, so here we go. So I'm going to start it on YouTube, and then I'll start it on Twitch, then I'll start it on YouTube. So here's episode 3. Ready? Yeah, this one will do a million 3 views, says John Pershing. That's how things work. Where'd he go? Okay, and I'll start YouTube first. YouTube, you'll probably loop around at the beginning. It'll take me a second to get back because we have to do 2 of these things. But here it is for YouTube. So, Mike, when you're telling a story, some of the techniques that are available to you because you don't have music or camera angles or special effects, and you don't need them. So let's take 4 examples: pace, pitch, volume, and tone. Right. The faster you talk, the more energy you're putting into the story. You're gonna want to hold on to that energy, keep it in the bag until you need it. But there's going to be times you're going to need to push some narrative through that story there, and you could pick up the pace. The volume comes up a little bit, tone may come up a little bit, but then the other side of that is that there are times when the story just needs to just slow down and breathe. And the pace goes down, and the tone goes down, and all of a sudden you use these techniques to base. It's not even like a string; it's more like a marionette stick. You can pull the audience forward, when you slow down and when you get quiet, and you can push them back a little bit when you need to move the mail, because sometimes you've got a lot of exposition has to get out of the way before you can get to what the story's really about.
Well, you do that really well, too. I've seen a lot of your stuff, and sometimes it's counterintuitive. Sometimes when a thing is really important, you kind of have to blast through it just because people are expecting you to do the other thing. It also depends where in the arc of your story this thing is. But look, I think the bigger point is it's back to music. You're talking about the music in the story. You even used the word pitch and tone. Those are musical expressions. So, Ken Burns agonized over finding just the right music to elevate his story, because the music is a story all by itself. So, yeah, every storyteller I admire is a music lover. I don't know of any exceptions, whether they're conscious of it or not. Something I started doing, especially with these large events, and you just said it, nobody wants a lecture. Nobody wants a sermon. Certainly nobody wants some middle-aged white guy shaking their finger at them and telling them to get off the lawn. But I spend a lot of time doing that in my own way, because I'm not out on the speaking circuit because I love to speak and tell stories, although I do. I'm out there because I run a foundation and I have a very specific goal that I'm trying to achieve. And that goal is rooted in lectures and sermons. That gold is rooted in the headlines. And so, knowing that nobody wants to hear these things, my first temptation is to put a bunch of other stuff in front of it and then kind of fool you into getting this thing at the end.
It's misdirection. It's exactly right.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
But I got to the point now where I actually have been playing with bookending it with the lecture part. But to your point, I do it fast. So I'll walk out and I'll say, what a privilege to be here today. I've been asked to share a few stories from my days on dirty jobs. Full disclosure, I really came here because I'm worried about the skills gap in this country. It gets wider every year. Right now we have 7.6 million available positions in our workforce, while 6.8 million able-bodied men are, for reasons we don't entirely understand, sitting home on their ass, not looking for work. Meanwhile, $1.7 trillion in outstanding student loans for jobs that don't even exist anymore. I submit to you that we're lending money we don't have to kids who are never going to be able to pay it back to train them for jobs that don't exist anymore. Now, having said all that, so I use tone, I use
You just
speed.
you accelerated the pace and you upped the energy.
I tell you how it's going to end. So now you don't have to wonder where I'm headed. Because I'm going to tell you, in about 40 minutes after I drag you through a sewer or violate some barnyard animal with you right on my shoulder, after I do something that's borderline really awkward and maybe even uncomfortable for the people who have overpaid me to come here today, to keep you entertained in between breakout sessions that deep down we all know none of you want anything to do with. So now they're laughing because now I'm telling them the truth
Right.
about what's happening. And now they're paying attention. They're a little hungover from the night before. It's Vegas after all. And so they're curious because what can he possibly tell me now after he told me the whole point of it and revealed the fact that he's an overpaid celebrity who has come to attempt to entertain us while we're all here, frankly, not even because we want to be. We had to be here. All of these things need to be acknowledged early on because that's the audience I'm in front of, and I would be a fool to pretend otherwise.
Okay, that was part 3. So yeah, man, he's a swell chap, that Micro, and he's got himself a fantastic foundation, which is microworks.org, and he is providing scholarships for students to go out and do man's work. You know, and he's right. And these guys are going to be employed for the rest of their lives. Castellan says every one of these segments ends with, I want more. Why did it end so soon? That is the highest compliment that can be paid any storyteller or editor or writer or anything. Thank you. That you may be the only person in the world who feels that way, but by God, that means a lot to me. Thank you very much. Bad Weather Biker over on YouTube. We are hearing me, aren't we? Yes, we are. Bad Weather Biker over on YouTube says, I'm living the skills gap in my area of expertise. The older guys like me in my field are in demand, overworked, stressed, and getting burned out because there are no new people in the pipeline. I think that's going to change. I think it's going to change quickly. And Marusha says he likes the Metropolis interstitials. I do too. And I keep scanning through Metropolis and finding background stuff that works, like the death playing the bone flute and the public speaking and all the rest of it. So yeah, so anyway, it's great. So we'll put that up tonight, and we've got that'll be the third one. I'll send out to the membership the second one on our newsletter tonight. And yeah, bring back trade schools. Mike is all about that. He's going to get it done too, because scholarships, you know, do the talking, man. He is from Baltimore. Talked to him a little bit about that too. In one of our shows that I did for Mike Rowe, by the way, most people who've been around the Stratosphere crowd for a while know that I had one of the signal honors of my life. Really one of the best days I ever had in my entire life. I went down to Tampa, where a bunch of Air Force pilots gave me a call sign in a naming ceremony, and my call sign turned out to be Skid because I was riding an electric motorcycle and I was blasted drunk towards the end of this thing and put a skid mark down on the guy's hangar. And I was telling Mike this story, and I was saying, he said, "So what's your call sign?" I said, "Well, it turned out to be Skid." And he goes, "Oh my God, that was my nickname in high school." I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, Skid Rowe. Everybody used to call me Skid." So it's a forced dyad. Oh yeah, Bill Drunk. I couldn't. I would have fallen off the floor. So yeah, it was really fun, and that was a pleasant and strange surprise that we both got the same nickname. It was kind of interesting. Is there a way to reduce the echo in the studio? No, there's no way to reduce the echo in the studio. All I can do is turn the sound down. I did overmodulate the sound on this first one. I'll bring it down a little bit, but the audio is the audio, so it's a little crackly because I was recording it a little hot, and once it's overmodulated, there's nothing you can do. It just peaks out. But it's an open space, a big open space, and I like that aspect of it. Wanted it to feel like backstage, and I'm real happy with how that worked out. So yeah, so that was kind of fun. All right, so we have a team of our best men on the job. With the website, it looks like we're I don't know if Jordan's watching now. I also got a very kind offer from one of our members to take a close look at this site. But we do have a web developer who's put in a bid to get this thing done in 6 to 7 days. It looks like that the speed issue for members, the website, billwhittle.com website is really pretty quick. It's a second or two, lots of images, and so it's a fast load. Very happy with it. But once you log in, it goes from 1 to 2 second loads to 8 to 10 second loads. That's not okay. And we're virtually positive now that it's got something to do with a cache for the forum. That it's looking for files, and one of our viewers identified 2 files that were like 23 seconds to load a picture. So I suspect that what we're going to do is you might find that the forum goes offline briefly while we work on that, and I suspect that once we get this cleaned out, one thing we might do, in fact, one thing I'm sure we'll do, is put an upload limit on the files, because I realized, as far as I know, somebody could upload a 100 gigabyte, video file and really squashes us. So there you go. Busted Half Nickels Swamp says, "What's your opinion on zodiac signs, Bill? Mr. Aries kind of looks like a Tesla symbol." Needless to say, I don't put a lot of stock in astrology. Although, and this isn't an although in terms of the, I'm sure this is the psychology of how it works. Although when I read Aries, that feels more like me than any of the other signs. But I don't. I know another guy who was born on my birthday, a couple years younger than me, and couldn't be more unalike. Now I know it depends on location and time of day and all the rest of it, but I don't put a lot of credence in that. I'm not one of these crusaders against it, but astrology is, one of the they did this. This guy took a newspaper horoscope, and I understand that's not a professional horoscope, and I get all that. I do. But basically took something and distributed it to the class and say, each one of these, here's your zodiac sign, tell me how accurate you think it is. And everybody rated it all as pretty accurate, and it turned out it was the same reading for everybody. So there you go. Anyway, that's that. I'm going to just charge on into the questions here because I know we've been doing shorter shows, compared to what we had been doing, but that's because I'm laser focused on one thing now, and that is getting the story mechanics up and posted, because we're going to need this membership drive, and we're going to need it pretty quick. And I am working on the script for the channel description, which I'll probably read here and get some feedback on before I record it. So there we go. Oh, this is just a minor point. AKA Woody Fool says Scorpio is a magnificent constellation. It is. I would say Scorpio is probably the second most magnificent constellation in the sky after Orion. I'm talking about astronomy now rather than astrology. Scorpius, it's Scorpius in astronomy rather than Scorpio. Scorpius is looks exactly like a scorpion. I mean, it's just it's uncanny. Everything else is just garbage, but Scorpius looks like a scorpion. Joseph J. Kozenzal. I keep getting that wrong. I'm sorry, Joseph, if there was a space there. Joseph J. Kozenza the third is where I'm going. With a super chat saying, God bless you, Bill. I'm starting a petition to make you run for California governor. I thought we were friends. What did I ever do to you? Thank you. I will decline with thanks, but thank you. Orion is a spectacular constellation, and will be until everybody calls it Betelgeuse, but I believe the correct pronunciation from the Arabic is Betelgeuse. The upper left-hand shoulder of Orion is unstable and is going to supernova, whether we get to live to see it or not. But Orion is spectacular. And Taurus is impressive as well. Taurus looks like a bull. Orion looks like a hunter. Scorpius looks like a scorpion. Canis Major looks a bit like a dog. Canis Minor looks nothing like a dog. And Speaker of the House, yes, no. Markham Inc. Says that I'd probably take. But anyway, I don't. I don't know. This is cool. Kirk's Bamboo Bazooka says Constellation is my favorite constitution. I kind of agree. I love the sound of USS Constellation. I think it's really cool. If I had to take over a Star Trek fan film thing, I wouldn't want Enterprise, just because it's been so done. And of the original 12 Federation Constitution class starships, it would either be Constitution or Constellation to be the one that I want. They've done a fanfic for Farragut, and I think they did one for Intrepid. But yeah. Crystal Lasar says, I first saw Saturn on the rooftop at the Museum of Science. I first saw it at my backyard in Bermuda, but then I came to the Museum of Science and Space Transit Planetarium with the Southern Cross Observatory atop it in the middle of Miami's light pollution. And yes, I've seen Saturn from the top of the Miami Planetarium many times. In fact, Natasha bought me a telescope for previous Christmas, and she got it from Amazon, bless her heart, and it looked almost exactly like the 6-inch reflector. Sorry, who am I kidding? The 3-inch reflector 3 or 4-inch that I got for Christmas in 1972. But unfortunately, it's a Chinese telescope, and the optics are just plain. They're not even optics. It's not good. And I was looking around, and I thought, ooh, they've got an 8-inch Celestron, and Celestron optics are terrific. They had a 14-inch Celestron up at the Museum of Science, came in a little later, and that thing was a beast. And I was actually looking at prices of those. Those are like $5-6 I think. But the 8-inch is only, what is it, 2 or 3? Only. It's a very nice telescope, however, very nice. Okay, so there we go. Let's get into the forum questions, shall we? Move this over here so we can still see this. Yeah, and I didn't, I didn't have the heart to tell her. I just don't use it very often because it's really not great. Armadillo Tech says, Bill, how did the ancients name the planets if they didn't have telescopes? They didn't know that they were disks. All they knew, planet means wanderer. The reason that they could tell that they were different than the other stars is because they move against the background of stars. Mercury moves the fastest among the background stars because it's in the closest orbit, so its position relative to background stars changes faster than any other planet that's visible from the Earth with the naked eye. So Mercury got the speed god, got the messenger of the gods, would have been Hermes in Greek. Venus has that beautiful pearly white color. It's just stunningly beautiful. I mean, it really is just beautiful, beautiful light that comes from Venus. So Venus got the goddess of beauty, and Mars is red, so it got the war god because it's blood red. It's not really blood red; it's more like brick red, but it's definitely red. Saturn is the slowest moving planet against the background stars of the original five planets visible to the naked eye. So Saturn is yellow and slow. So Saturn is the god of old age and Kronos in Greek, I think. The big mystery is why Jupiter. Jupiter's not the brightest, and it's not the dimmest, it's not the fastest, and it's not the slowest. But everybody looked at Jupiter and understood that Jupiter or Zeus was the there's something about it. There's no way to tell why they got that right, but Jupiter is the king of the gods, and Jupiter is the king of the planets. So, but Venus when Venus is at full western or eastern elongation, when it's as far away from the sun as possible, which means it's good and dark while it's still up high in the sky. It is an incredibly beautiful color, and I've seen Venus in broad daylight. One of Infinity says, did I hear about the pyramid findings? I did. We talked about it a while ago. I will 8 1,000-foot cylinders. I got to tell you, Infinity, if it's true, it will be the discovery of not only of a lifetime, one of the greatest discoveries of all time, and I just the engineering required is so enormous that I just don't think it's artificial. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's artifacts or what, but I mean geological artifacts. It's possible that they built them on some kind of granite substrate or something. But if it turns out that there are 1,000-foot, it's inconceivable, really inconceivable. That those are real. So when I see pictures from the inside of them and I see somebody going down a spiral staircase 1,000 feet, then I'll say, wow. But I know it's true that they're reporting it, Infinity. It doesn't mean it's true that that's what they are. The likelihood of it being 1,000-foot deep columns is so beyond credibility that almost any other excuse is more likely. But like I said, I know they have pictures. I understand that there are pictures of the Loch Ness Monster too. I'm just saying, when they show me the columns, the inside of the columns, then I'll say, wow. Right now, it's so unlikely that I just don't think anything's going to come of it. So we'll see. And somebody asked if it's true that if Katy Perry and the gang went into space, they said it looked fake. No, it's absolutely true. It's 100% that they did get into space. It's a simple rocket. It's not a big deal. It doesn't produce a lot of smoke, or it doesn't need to, because it's not going to get to 17,800 miles an hour. It's going to get to 400 miles an hour. It just goes straight up. Space is 60 miles away. If you got in your car and got on a freeway and drove straight up, you'd be in space in an hour. So, you get it. So, in any event, they definitely went to space. The weightlessness is space. The rocket is so small and relatively low power. Like the Falcon rocket, for example, is an orbital rocket. This is a suborbital rocket. And people say, oh, well, there's no reentry burns on it. Well, there's no reentry burns on it because it didn't get to 3,000 degrees. It only got to 300 degrees. It's an enormously simpler problem than an orbital flight. And a lot of people said, oh, that impact would have killed them. But that big cloud you see is not the capsule hitting the ground. There is the Russians do this too. There are retro rockets that fire, and they fire real low. They fire at like 6 or 7 feet. And those retro rockets cushion the blow. There's just a like an airbag that goes off. So yes, they definitely went to space. There's no question they went to space. They just weren't crew. They were passengers. And no shame in that. I'd give an arm to be one of those passengers, but they're not crew. And the big argument and the big discussion going on is whether or not they get to be called astronauts or not. I'm inclined to say no. And that would apply to me too, as much as I would like it. Although, if I was on board that baby and they had a malfunction, I'd hand fly that capsule back down, by God. So we'll see. All right, there you go. Yes, they definitely went to space. And if you're going to go to space on a suborbital flight, that's the way to go, man. The windows on that and the size of that capsule, that is a heck of a view. I just wouldn't have spent the whole time taking selfies. And I wouldn't be, and that's another thing, by the way, if I had gone on that flight, or if I ever get a chance to go on that flight, there's no way that I'm going to be using my iPhone to take a picture out the window. I'm going to take every second sucking up that experience. I've never understood people who are in the presence of something absolutely awe-inspiring, but repeatable, like, incredible fireworks show or something like that. Or going down the Grand Canyon and they spend the whole trip just looking at their screen. They can get a professional 4K version of this, much better than what they're taking. Use your eyes. I have to sometimes nudge Natasha in this direction. She's a photographer, so she likes to record everything. It's like, honey, just watch it. Just don't look at it on the screen. Watch it. All right, here we go. Let's see what we have. Black Gossip says, thank you for letting me share. I did see the women go to space. Yes, well, you're welcome. It's good to have your Black Gossip. And I'm assuming it's Black Gossip, it's BLK Gossip. Welcome aboard and good to have you. Hope you have a nominal experience. All right, let's see. Members forum. Boom. So if it turns out that the forum goes down a little bit in the next week, it's under repair. Okay, so questions for 417. Thank you, Marusha, for curating these once again. Loading. Christ, it's slow. It's ridiculous. All right, here we go. Let's have a look at let's just scan the program and see what's coming up. We got a Marusha Dark. We got a Road Runner. We got a Road Rider. We got a Broke College student. We got a Bob Neef. We got a Fiery Waco, Jane Waterman. Oh, it's good to see Janie. We've got an Astrosea, who we just saw earlier. So that's a nice new name. Capital G Geek, Steve Young, Marusha Dark, Eric Blake. Well, we're not doing two. Marusha's Epic AOC. One of them, the top, is a second request, so we'll do that one, and then we'll. I'm just not gonna be able to do two long ones like this again. So these questions are statements. Okay, so second time I did ask you to ask again, because first time I was just plain burned out. Working. Topic role player in chief. Second time asking, Mr. Virtual President, you just concluded your first official phone call with the presidents of China, Russia, and Iran. Can you walk us through the transcript of each call? How did you greet them? What tone did you use? What did you discuss? What demands, requests, and assurances did you make? Were they a great conversation with somebody you now consider a very close friend? Are you optimistic about them wanting to make a deal with you? Take us how it went down and describe the dialogue that we, the American public, so rarely get to hear, as though you were writing it for a screenplay. All right, I'll start with Russia. Yes, I had a conversation with President Putin. It was not a friendly conversation by any means, but it was a productive conversation, which basically boiled down to this. Russia is a great power and has been for essentially all of European history. And Russia, like the United States, considers itself the center of a sphere of influence. The United States went toe-to-toe with Russia as the Soviet Union over the imposition of medium-range nuclear missiles in Cuba in the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. And our insistence that those missiles not be placed there, I think, was justified in terms of America's interests. And because of that, it's entirely reasonable to see. Faria Waco says, when has Russia been a power? Maybe I've been paying attention during the Cold War, but yes. So there's no question that they are. So I basically said, Vladimir, here's the problem. You have a right to be concerned about encroachments on your borders from someone who you consider to be your enemy. NATO is not your enemy. NATO was as you well know, President Putin, NATO was formed because the Soviet Union broke its promises that were made during the Yalta Conference and during the what's the name of that German town? Potsdam Conference, and you broke them from the time the war ended. NATO has been there to stop Soviet aggression, and Soviet aggression took place in Hungary, Czechoslovakia, Poland, Afghanistan, and so on and so on and so on. You're not great neighbors. And so when the Soviet Union broke up, the United States made a deal with Ukraine saying we didn't want nuclear proliferation. So we said basically, if Ukraine gives its nuclear weapons back to Russia, then the United States would guarantee the territorial integrity of Ukraine. That's a deal that Bill Clinton made, and that deal was codified as the word of the United States of America. That's all water under the bridge now. So, I understand that Russia is very tender in this area. So, my deal is no NATO in Ukraine. We will have a commercial presence in Ukraine, but we will not have a military presence in Ukraine. And all of this stuff is good for you and good for us, except for the fact that what do we do about the problem of rewarding aggression? Because this one is a tough one for us to swallow, Vlad. I can put myself in your position and justify your actions. I can do that, but I can't put myself in the position of the rest of the world and justify it. So, I think that you have had a real thrashing in Ukraine, and I know you're willing to throw as many lives as you possibly can into this, and that you're not going to stop until you get what you want. So I asked President Putin what it was that he wanted. What President Putin wants is number one, he wants security on his southwestern border. He wants to know that there are not enemy troops on the other side of his border. So, no NATO in Ukraine, a demilitarized zone. I'd be willing to talk about no offensive weapons in Ukraine. I think Ukraine has a right to defensive weapons. I think that you've made that necessary for them. So the question is, what do we do about the aggression? There is truth in Putin's position that a number of the eastern provinces of Ukraine are largely ethnic Russian. And I think that all of this stuff probably could have been worked out, but maybe not. In any event, it's all water under the bridge. Right now, there are 1 million dead soldiers and probably half that many civilians. And there are more young Russian boys and Ukrainian boys being killed every day. And we need to put a stop to it. So I think the solution would be to have the Russians walk back. What I would negotiate for would be to have the Russians walk back to the pre-invasion borders and then give them the security guarantees that they wanted. But if they wouldn't buy the whole border, if they wouldn't buy going back behind the line, then I would say that everything from the pre-war border to the current status quo, we're in trench warfare now. The lines are not moving. They're no longer gaining ground. They're no longer losing ground. It's absolutely static. Then I think probably what we would do is say that Donbass region and the other regions in question become demilitarized zone that is a pretty wide zone. And that we would agree that we would not be pursuing any mineral rights in that area. And that is the best deal that we can make right now. That would be my position from the phone call I just had with Vladimir Putin. Ukraine does not get Crimea back. Crimea stays with Russia. And the reason Crimea stays with Russia is because Crimea has always been Russian. Crimea was given to Ukraine by Khrushchev as an act of solidarity, but it was never ethnically Ukrainian. Crimea was always ethnically Russian. And so that's also water under the bridge. But that's 2014. If that had been Ukrainian territory, then we'd be having a different situation. There's no question it was legally Ukrainian territory. There's no question that Putin illegally invaded it. He illegally invaded Georgia as well. But nevertheless, we have to deal with the reality of a situation on the ground. That is a fait accompli. That's not going back. There's no way that's going back. That is historically and ethically Russian, 98% or something like that. So that's the way it is. And what does Zelensky get? Well, Zelensky gets the win to the degree that the goal of the Russian invasion was to overthrow the Ukrainian government, and the Ukrainian government is not overthrown. The Ukrainian government is elected by the Ukrainians, and yes, there has not been an election in Ukraine for quite a long time, and I get all of the things about Zelensky, all the good. I get the good and the bad about Zelensky, but basically, the Russian invasion was a decapitation strike against Kyiv, and when that failed, it became this quagmire. So the Russian goal of the invasion was to turn Ukraine into a puppet state, and they failed in that. Ukraine remains an independent country. They are somewhat smaller than they used to be, but they're not off the map. And we don't live in a world with good and bad choices. We live in a world with bad and worse choices. And that is, in my opinion, as virtual president, the least bad arrangement that we can salvage out of this goddamn mess. So that was my call with Mr. Putin. My call with the president of Iran isn't giving them Crimea rewarding aggression. Well, it happened 11 years ago, Marusha, so it's a little late to ring the fire bell for that one, you know? This is like people saying, I got beat up by this guy, 6 years ago and I didn't file a police report. It's what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? What should the U.S. do about that? Should the U.S. back? Should the U.S. invade Crimea? This is what I mean between there's no good answers. Because if there was a good answer, if there was an easy answer, we'd be able to punish them for all the aggression. But there's no way to do that. So what do you want us to do? Do you want the U.S. to invade Crimea so we can give it back to Ukraine? Because that's the only way that's going to happen. And frankly, I don't see that as our problem. So The ultimate issue is this. Russian aggression was stopped in Ukraine because the Ukrainians destroyed the Russian military. And people want to argue that point. They can argue it all they want to. There is nothing left of the Russian military. They have no offensive capabilities left. They're barely hanging on. Their entire Black Sea fleet is scattered to the winds. There is no more Russian aggression for the next decade or two because of what the Ukrainians did to the Russian military invasion. They paid a price for their aggression. The Russians, this would be like, the equivalent analogy historically would be, what do you do if Hitler invades Poland, right? You want to punish the aggression of Hitler invading Poland. But what happens if Hitler invades Poland and Poland fights the Wehrmacht to a dead standstill? Then there is no invasion of France. There's no invasion of Russia. They just plain wipe they just plain stop them and grind them down to dust. The invasion is the punishment. So there you go. So yeah, things getting a little spicy over in the YouTube comment section, and I'm getting a little tired of it. So somebody needs to stop poking around, or else we're going to have to block people, which I'd prefer not to do. Okay, so that was that. Now, my conversation with the president of Iran was very brief. I basically said, I would suggest and hope that I'm making this call to you and you are in a bunker someplace, because that would be my advice to you, would be to seek shelter as deep as you can as soon as possible. Iran declared war on the United States of America in 1979, and I am now, after all of these years, saying that we're going to recognize it as such. If you think we're going to get embroiled in another ground war in the Middle East, you are out of your mind. We will destroy your military at the push of a button, and we won't so much scuff a uniform. If these attacks continue, you can expect to see retaliation from the United States in terms of the next time that you launch an attack on Israel or any of our allies. You will lose 4 military installations. And if you do it again, you'll lose another 5. If you do it again, you'll lose 8. And we'll keep on going until you don't have anything left. We can wipe your military off the face of the earth without risking a single American life, and we will do it too. So I'm telling you now, as of today, as of April 17th at 4:30 this afternoon, when I hung up the phone, the next time that Iran launches an attack against the United States or any of its allies, it can expect to lose a significant amount of its total military force. And I'd like to point out, we're not just talking about remote installations. I am talking about command and control centers where your top generals are. So you might want to spread that word as well. They are just going to go away. And if you don't believe me, then try us. No raids, no special forces, none of that. Cruise missile strikes, B-2 strikes. We are going to selectively and progressively eliminate your military. We're not going to go after civilian targets. We're just going to deprive you of a military until you stop doing this. And if the Iranian people have the courage to rise up again after the United States didn't even morally support their last uprising back in 2009, then you have the full support of the United States. We are all about freedom, folks. That's our brand. And all we have to do to show the world what villains you are is to show people of what Tehran looked like in 1978. Women walking around in miniskirts and beautiful airlines and everything working, everything fine. You want to become a rogue nation? That's fine. You're going to be treated like one. But this time there are going to be consequences for your action. And by the way, just before I hang up, last thing, the response to your next attack is not going to be proportional. Sad Wings Raging clicked in the second after I said the word. There's going to be nothing proportional about our response. Our response is going to be overwhelming. We're going to take a quarter of your military away. You do it again, we'll take a half of your military away. And we will keep doing this until you stop. And if they do launch another attack, another provocation, this is just between us. I might allow this to be overheard, you know. Oh, by the way, Pete. Yes, Mr. President. If they decide to play games with us again, on that first strike, I want all of their nuclear facilities off the board. All of them. Oh, there's a potential danger for fallout, Mr. President. Well, which way's the wind blowing in Iran? Because that's not my problem. I want the nuclear facilities on the first strike. Did you catch that? Oh, I'm sorry. I meant to have that muted. No. Yes, your nuclear facilities are going on the first strike, and other things too. That's right. That's what I said, Steve Young, on that speech I did impromptu. We will lay you bare to your enemies for generations. We will wipe out your ability to defend yourself. We will level you. Just try me. We got all kinds of new weapon systems that we haven't tested yet. And we're not putting any of our guys at risk. Can't stress this enough. We're not putting any of our people at risk. There's going to come a time, if you decide to go ahead with this, where you're going to realize that your Air Force is missing. And those airplanes that you get up in the air are going to simply explode in midair. They're not going to know what hit them. You will lose your Air Force. You will lose your Navy. Do not touch our boats. John Eden for a super chat for $99.99. Again, John is the hero of the stratosphere community. He drops in like Santa Claus every time with these incredibly generous donations, and we're very grateful. Oh yeah, Lady Hawk reminded me of one thing. By the way, Iran, any attacks on American citizens, especially American civilians, you're going to lose everything. And if there's an atrocity attack, you may get a chance to see the bright white light of freedom, because I'm not taking that off the table. So, you have a great day. You guys decide to come in from the rain, we'd be happy to welcome you back into the community of nations. And then my conversation with Xi Jinping would be pretty simple. What are you planning to do with all that open factory space? President Xi? Because the tariffs are now at 245%, and the damage it's doing to your country is so catastrophic that I am, in the interest of the United States, and your endless aggression, your inability to follow any agreements, your flagrant stealing of military and commercial secrets, your absolute disregard for your own people, your inability to stop cheating and lying, your ability to fake everything, the fact that everything about your entire system is predicated on lies and bluster and for the last decade of wolf warrior diplomacy, I've decided to raise the tariff to 400%. You can make our tariffs 10 million% if you want to. I don't know what the exact exchange rate is, but we import 11 of your boxes for every one of our boxes that you import. I've seen the reports from your cities. I've seen the empty factories. I've seen the people in despair. There's not an American who notices this yet. So 400%, I think, is a nice start. And then when things get bad and your entire country is out of work, your regime is finished. So I'm going to do to you what Ronald Reagan did to the Soviets. I'm not going to fight you on the battlefield. I'm not going to fight your Navy. We're never going to have that big clash. Your Navy's never going to face the United States Navy. Your Navy's never going to have a chance to go to Taiwan. Your Navy is never going to leave port again because it's not going to have any money, because it's not going to have any fuel. We are going to make a coalition of the world against you. We've already done it. And you are the manufacturing center of the world. but the stuff you manufacture is garbage, and we can live without the garbage. So, you took our factories away. To be fair, we not only allowed you, but we practically encouraged you. So all of those factories in America that closed in the 80s and 90s and all of the pain and suffering that caused here, well, looks like you're going to be getting a dose of that, and you got no one to blame but yourself, because you're incapable of playing fair. You're a rogue nation, and you are getting what you deserve, and it's been coming to you for a long, long time. You have a real good day now, and if you think that your only way out of this is to invade Taiwan and whip up nationalist frenzy, I'm telling you on the down low, one president to another, that your transports are not going to get 20 miles offshore on the way to Taiwan. There's no way you're crossing the Strait of Taiwan. No way. You think we're going to send our aircraft carriers? We're not sending our aircraft carriers. You can deal with our Virginia-class submarines. I've ordered 11 of them to the Strait of Taiwan. There's no way you're crossing that strait. So, any other questions? No? Great talking to you. You have a blessed day. That's basically it. Yep, you can meet the Mark 48 ad cap. It'll explode underneath the keel of your transports, breaks the back of the ship, snaps in two, it goes down real fast, takes all the troops with it. We don't want to use that. That's a brutal way to go, and it's not fair to the young men that you've conscripted into your army, but you don't give a damn about them anyway. We give a damn about our guys, though. We will stop this invasion, and we won't lose a single man. You don't know our Navy. I know our Navy. It's not going to happen. Okay, any other questions? No? Okay, that's basically how my conversations went. Roadrunner NM, greetings, friend Bill. Sun Wukong with a $10 super chat. I'm all behind you, Bill. However, I don't think the Don and MAGA understand what it takes to actually apply peace through strength. If they did, we wouldn't be here right now. 20 years has made us weary. I couldn't disagree more with you, son. With respect, these tariffs that keep increasing have crippled China. China is absolutely lost. China does not know what to do. China was in heavy decline and facing an incredible problem with their demographics before these tariffs went into effect, but they are lost. They are wandering around trying to figure out what to do. Needless to say, the CCP's position was to act tough. We will fight this to the end. You don't hold any of the cards. We're holding the cards. You've got nothing to do with us. We are the prize. So, we'll just deal with Vietnam and Singapore and Cambodia, and we'll deal with the Philippines, and we'll deal with Thailand, and we'll do all of that. But mostly what we'll do is we'll bring the factories back to America where they belong. So, to be honest with you, G, I really need to thank you, because if you hadn't behaved like such a jackass, it may never have come down to this, and we probably would have allowed this leeching to continue for another 20 or 30 or 40 years until we were genuinely weak. But unfortunately, you pushed your luck, and you just couldn't hold back and couldn't resist, so there's that. And by the way, all of those investments you made in America, I've got somebody working on the balance sheets. And as it turns out, strange coincidence, really, but I had one set of guys tally the amount of money that China has invested in the United States, and another set of guys tally how much damage the Wuhan virus did to the American economy. And bugger me if by the most astonishing coincidence those numbers came out to be exactly the same. It's strange, isn't it? Just exactly the same. We owe you this amount of money, and you owe us this amount in damages. Perfect match. Weird how that worked. Very, very strange. But, the Lord moves in mysterious ways. There you go. Okay, moving on. Yeah, that's my attitude. That's my attitude. About $1 trillion? Pfft. Yes, seize assets. Absolutely seize assets. Damages. That's what it will take to make this country whole again after you can say it was an accident. Even if it was an accident, it's your accident. But we know it's not an accident because you cut off flights from Wuhan to other parts of China 10 days before we stopped flights coming into China from the United States. So you were allowing infected people to go to America and Europe, especially Italy, but you weren't allowing infected people to go to other parts of China. That is evidence of cover-up. That is evidence of guilt. So, nice try, but it didn't work. You bought yourself 4 years, and those 4 years are up. So, any other questions? You're going to overtake the United States. Who do you think you are? Overtake the United States of America? I've never bought this, by the way. Parentheses, brackets, out of the conversation. I have never, ever, 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 sorry about that, Roadrunner, ever believed that China was going to overtake the United States. Not when China was at its absolute peak. Never, ever did I ever worry about these guys. I know they turn out more engineers than we turn out college students. But these engineers, not to say that we don't have horrific deficiencies in our education system. Horrific. But with that said, all of your engineers are capable mathematicians, but AI does math faster than your engineers do. And none of your engineers show any initiative. None of them show any inventiveness. None of them show any creativity because it's beaten out of them by your system. We will offer golden tickets to the people who we think can make real contributions. But see, here's the problem, China. You decided to take the shortcut by stealing our military and industrial secrets and having us pay the research price while you simply get the results. And that's a strategy. It saved you decades and trillions of dollars. But the one thing that you don't seem to understand and never do seem to understand is if you are copying somebody else, if that's your strategy for success, is copying somebody else, you will always be one generation behind the leader. And the leader is who you're talking to on the phone right now. You will always be a generation behind the leader. I would be frightened if instead of copying our secrets, you were doing fundamental basic research. But no. No. And I've bought enough Chinese crap that was advertised, clearly advertised one way. And when it arrives, you open the box and you just can't believe that they had the nerve to send it to you. And you understand that there's no way you're going to get your money back. So that's a business strategy. It's a strategy of fraud. And your entire country is a fraud. So now you can sit in your fraudulent country and watch your buildings turn to dust next time there's a major earthquake over there. No, I don't believe that, Roadrunner. Don't believe it. Roadrunner's trying to get my goat. He says the Polaris nuclear submarine was made in China from Monday Night Show. No, it was not made in China. I guarantee it. They didn't have the technology to make a cardboard submarine in 1967. I don't know where it was made, but I'm sure it was made in America. Anyway, here we go. Roadrunner. Greetings, friend Bill. Hello, Roadrunner. Personally getting very tired of progressives' unstated message of men are better at everything, including being women. Why progressives are against biological females and children showed by their protestation that Mayan child sacrifices were mostly peaceful. Yeah, the Aztecs, worst people ever lived on this earth. Have always confused me based on their stated beliefs that all men are scum. So little has been done for so long, I was happy to finally see more pushback by President Trump and his administration. They formed a special Title IX Special Investigations Team, a coordinated effort of the Department of Education. First real positive reason for its existence. Not enough to make up for it in my mind. Time for it to go. And the Department of Justice to stop biological males from stealing victories from female athletes in college sports in support of President Trump's executive order. I would be interested in hearing your thoughts on this issue. He also mentions, hey, I'm sorry to keep attaching memes. He sent a meme and it's a picture of an angry woman and the caption is, if you can't look back at your younger self and realize that you were an idiot, you're probably still an idiot. That's the left in a nutshell. Yeah, nobody's going to touch our boats, man. So I've been giving a lot of thought to this trans thing, and I thought, why? What is it? What is power? I know what's powering it from the top down. I miss super chats from Douglas Nelson and Baron of Gray Matter. Thank you, Mauricio. Let's see. Baron of Gray Matter on the China conversation says it has nothing to do with fair. They don't even use the same rule book. Asking them to play fair is ridiculous. Yes, they don't know what fair is. They think fair is for suckers. So thank you for that. And I'm sorry I missed you. And Douglas Nelson, is there a potential scenario where China collapses into civil war? Yes, and the potential scenario is the United States imposes high tariffs on Chinese goods. The entire Chinese economy collapses, and the people take it out on the Communist Chinese Party. They overthrow the Communist Chinese Party. They become essentially a larger Taiwan. America drops the tariffs immediately, and we get a trading partner, and they stop spending their money on a navy to match our navy, because there is no navy to match our navy. We will continue to spend what we need to put that Chinese navy to sea. I think the Chinese navy should be about the size needed to defend China. And that's it. Who are you to say? Well, we're the United States of America, you miserable low-life son of a bitch. That's who we are to say. We're nice guys. We really are. We're just tired of getting dicked over. And you can stop fishing in other people's water too, by the way, because that will result in tariffs. There's more tariffs. We just pile them on. I was Roadrunner was always saying I get interrupted in his questions, and I always do. But just going backwards, again for a second, China has no purchasing power. The Chinese people are saving every penny. Their assets have been liquidated by their market collapse as a result of these tariffs. The entire market there has just collapsed. They have no future. The United States is a third of the world market. 1 out of every $3 that moves around the world comes from the United States. Everybody not only wants to do business here, they have to do business here. When China was already way over production capacity before the tariffs. Now that the tariffs have canceled all these orders, huge section of their population is out of work with no change on the horizon. And so I am astonished at how easy it was to bring China to absolute supine status. They're just on their back, and there's nothing that they can do. They can't get out of it. They can't tough their way out of it. They can't cheat their way out of it. I don't know if this was Donald Trump's intention. I wouldn't put it past him, because he's looking more brilliant every day. But what Donald Trump is doing with China is exactly what Ronald Reagan did with the Soviets. And he's basically saying, we're not going to fight you at sea. We'll just bankrupt you. Your economy is predicated on us. If you think we're going to miss $12 can openers that don't work when they come out of the box, you're wrong. And if Americans find out that they have to pay $40 or $50 for a can opener, and it's made in America and it's repairable, So there's that. They dumping stuff. It's dumping is where they sell products at a loss. They have the Chinese government subsidizes a factory. They sell a product for less than it costs to make. They put all of the competitors out of business. Then they corner the market. I know, tofu engineering, tofu drag buildings in China. They're knocking down these empty cities. But when a large earthquake comes, and it will, all of that tofu dreg stuff, the concrete that you can break off the wall with your fingers and turn to powder, that stuff is going to come down, and there's going to be millions of people in it. Oh, Dave's Real Estate Area 51 just wins the internet for the night. The worst product China ever gave us was Joe Biden. Congratulations, sir. Well played. Bravo. Anyway, back to this. So Title IX and the trans thing. So I was giving this trans thing a thought, and why is it ballooning? Why is it even a thing? And I thought, well, maybe it's because that Gen Z was raised as as, everybody's special. Everybody is special, and your artwork is the most amazing artwork ever, and you never lost, and all of that. But it's actually simpler than that. The reason that the trans thing is what it is because this generation has never been told no, and reality is telling them no. Reality is saying no. Just because you say you're a woman doesn't mean you're a woman. Yes, it does. No, it doesn't. Yes, it does. They really think they can argue their way out of this. And we had 7, 8 years of it. But no, it's not true. It's not going to happen. You cannot argue your way out of this. And the fact that biology says no is what makes them lose their minds, because no one has ever told them no before and stood on it. In fact, when they started telling people that men could be women just by saying they're women, what happened? The country bowed down to them the way they have throughout their entire lives. They got their way in kindergarten, they got their way in elementary school, they got their way in high school, got their way in college, they got their way as they got out of college, they got their way now. And suddenly, no, all of a sudden it's like, no, reality says no. Reality says, computer says no, reality says, not going to happen, no. I saw William Thomas talking about how unfair all this is, and I realized this guy's commitment to transitioning to being a woman is growing his hair long. He doesn't make any effort to be a woman. He's not living his life as a woman. He's a 507th ranked swimmer who wants to win. Stunning and brave. No, he's not stunning and brave. He's a coward. He's a coward and a dishonorable narcissist who wants to win in the kids' league. Why doesn't he compete against elementary school kids? Why not just do that? I mean, you want to come in first. Why not just compete against high school kids or elementary school kids or kindergartners? Just keep walking it down until you come in first. That's the only thing that matters to you. It's all about you and your feelings. It's not fair to me. I don't feel fully realized. Well, then we'll take it out on 9 million biological women. I shouldn't even have to say biological women. 9 million women, right? 9 million women are going to pay the price for this one guy. See, it's not about the guy. It's not about trans athletes. It's about the ability to argue your way out of reality. It's about you versus reality. The answer is no. No. They've never been told no. They don't understand no. They genuinely don't understand it. They don't know how to process it. They believe that if they have enough of a temper tantrum and stamp their feet enough, then they're going to get their way. But no. And the thing that's most amazing is that some of the more serious trans people genuinely think that they can argue their way. Now listen to this. A biological male decides to become a female and wants to date straight men. And the trans activists think that they can argue their way. It's transphobic of a straight man to not date a trans woman. Just because she's got a penis doesn't mean you shouldn't be attracted to her. Right? They think that they can argue, and if you don't, and if you don't agree with us, then you're racist or you're transphobic. It's like you're not going to win this argument. You're not going to talk your way out of this one. You're going to jail. I'm not under arrest. You are. I'm not going to jail. Yes, you are. No. Donald Helms with a super chat. Going back to the previous topic, and Trump should expel all Chinese citizens from our colleges and universities and deport them back to China. Not all of them. Well, I'm shading your question because I completely agree with the sentiment. I say there should be an exemption made for people who could be provably willing to become American citizens. Not undercover operatives or not fakers. People who are studying here, Chinese students studying here, if they provably were ready to become American citizens and go through all of that, then I say let them stay, because some of them are brilliant. And we are education deficient. I don't care where you come from. If you want to be an American citizen and you understand what that means, then welcome aboard. Get in line, do the test, and you really want to impress me, join the military. That in my opinion, by the way, to the degree that the subject came up, we can't seem to get off of this China thing. But if you enlist, and I'm talking about today, I'm talking about Pete Hegseth's military, not Joe Biden's military. But I think any foreign national who is a resident alien or whatever the case, if they enlist in the military and they serve their term and they are honorably discharged, I think honorable discharge from the United States military should grant citizenship automatically. Roadrunner says just because Chinese students become American citizens does not mean they don't send everything they learn back to China. That's what I meant by saying authentically, provably. I'm not that naive. I'm saying you would have to really means test them. But yes, I think that anybody serves honorably in the United States military should, when they get their honorable discharge after serving their term of duty, welcome aboard, citizen. It's good enough for me, man. Swore an oath to protect the Constitution of the United States and were ready to give their life for it, then there you go. You busted Half Nickel Swamp says there's a big difference between wanting to be in America and wanting to be an American, which is why I said be an American. Yes. So there's a lot, like, for example, Road Rider says some of the local Chinese are sweet kids just trying to get by and secretly hate Beijing. Just saying from firsthand knowledge, yes. These are the kind of immigrants we want. And I'm not naive about this. They'd have to really convince us. Eric says, brilliant, bring in Chinese scientists and engineers via Operation Paperclip 2.0. Yes, rigorously psychologically test them and keep them on probation for a long time. But yeah, I've always thought, you see a lot of Hispanic, Central American immigrants or South American immigrants, mostly Central American immigrants, who serve in the United States military even though they're not citizens. I don't know what else you need. That's good enough for me, man. So I think it should be automatic. I really think it should be automatic and instantaneous. When you, at the end of your first hitch, if you were ready to be honorably discharged, then you get a citizenship upon your honorable discharge or your citizenship upon reenlisting. These are the people I want. These are the people we need. I'm 100% on board with that. Anyway, as far as the trans thing goes, it's all about the denial of reality. It's all about whether or not the left can argue their way out of reality. And it's also a measure of how much social proof can they put on an issue. They put all their cards down on the trans table. That's the hill they're going to die on. How much social proof can they bring to it? The nice thing about social proof is, and peer pressure is, when somebody sticks their head up and says, no, the emperor's not wearing any clothes, then the whole thing falls apart. So, I'm not, they're done. And they're not building it back. They've got the tools, the weapons that they use to build this left-wing edifice that is hollow, that seems so intimidating. It's just hollow. It's just sawdust and paper mache. But the mainstream media and the culture, movie stars, movies, nobody watches movies anymore. Nobody gives a damn about movie stars anymore. There is no mainstream media anymore. They don't have their weapons anymore. They can't come back. They've got no weapons. I'm telling you, man, it's really over. It's over unless we intentionally fumble the ball. That's what it would take. Douglas Nelson with the super chat says, the worst that can happen to the professional activist is victory. Once gay marriage was achieved, the gay lobby was largely irrelevant, thus LGBT was born. So the racket continues. Yes. Advocacy groups like government agencies are immortal, and once they're established, they will continue to find reasons to not only exist, but to expand their budgets and their reach. This is what we're up against. We're fighting termites. We're fighting rust. It never sleeps, never goes away, never stops. It will continue until it wins or until we defeat it for the day. You know, something's rusting, we sand it down, we paint it, and we wait because it's going to start rusting again. And all of the work is on our shoulders, and none of the work is on their shoulders because entropy is on their side. So, you want a nice lawn? You got to mow the grass. You got to pull the weeds. You got to do all of that. And that's the price of having a nice lawn. And if you don't want to do that, then you lose. Roadrunner says, but the Democrat Party has a 21% approval rating, which is about exactly where it's going to stay. It's the 80-20 rule. Trump is a genius. He's not picking fights where he's not at 80-20. The only fights he's fighting are at 80-20. 80% of the people of this country would like to see government waste curtailed. I'm not saying 80% want to see all of these departments eliminated. That's just the smart 60%. But 80% understands that you can't defend $1 trillion waste. So, there you go. Mow the lawn, man. Paint the bridge, paint the ship, paint. Sand. Spray. Mow. Ho. Nurgle. Yes, Nurgle. Of all of the four, Nurgle's the one that disgusts me the most. Insider baseball for those people in the know. Okay, let's see, moving on. Road Rider. Is time speeding up? I know it's probably a question best for Stratosphere Studio, but April 17th already? I know. I just asked Grok, who in the United States controls the judiciary? President nominates and the Senate confirms judges, but something must manage this thing called the judiciary, Grok said. The judiciary runs itself through the Administrative Office of the U.S. Courts, which handles budgets, staffing, and logistics. The Judicial Conference of the United States, led by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, currently John Roberts, sets policies for how federal courts operate. But this is about management, not controlling case decisions. Thank you, John Roberts. That's really what it comes down to. It's John Roberts that is allowing these low-level judges to stop the President of the United States from doing his job, that are powers that are outlined in the Constitution for the executive branch. If the conference is led by John Roberts and the conference sets policies on how federal courts operate, could Roberts advocate for changes in how far lower district judges can go in issuing nationwide temporary restraining orders? Yes, he could have done it any time. He's a spineless, gutless narcissist who is so concerned with his reputation, the reputation of the Roberts Court, that he's thrown away whatever reputation he could have built for himself. He could have built a reputation as a guy who defended the Constitution and who brought constitutional rights back to the United States citizen. But no, he's a coward. He's a moral coward. He doesn't want a fight. Dave Reels, Area 51 says, John, I'm a good boy, aren't I, Roberts? Yes, that's exactly what he is. Absolutely right. I'm a good boy, aren't I? Everybody likes me, right? No. Roberts could have put an end to this by the method that Grok outlined. He is in charge of essentially managing what the lower courts do because the Supreme Court sets the precedent. And he could have said, no. Bought and paid for jellyfish? I don't even think he's bought and paid for, to be honest with you, short-ass bastard. I don't think he's corrupt. I wouldn't fall off a chair if it turned out he was, but I don't think he's corrupt. He doesn't strike me as corrupt. I just think he's weak. And I think he's Lance Ito. It's like the Ito court. Remember Lance Ito from the OJ trial? All of a sudden finds himself famous in the spotlight, and now he's going out with all these movie stars and getting all these interviews, and he just becomes completely infatuated with himself and his image and all the rest of it. So, look, Roberts could be worse. He could be a lot worse, but he could be a lot better too. You Busted Half Nickel Swamp says, type 2323 if anyone in this live stream believes that the Carmelo Anthony trial will dwarf the Luigi Mangione trial. The Dems are desperate for the resurrection of BLM this late summer. Well, Carmela Anthony is in a very, very different situation. Yes, they're turning him into a he did nothing wrong. He's a great leader of his community. Okay, we'll see. Super chat from Sad Wings Raging. If the trans community now identifying with the Chaos Lords, and I just shrug and say, "See, I told you so." Once said by a great man, think he had a book about it. Okay, we'll see. Anyway, moving on. So yes, the answer is, Road Rider, that yes, Roberts could have done something about these lower courts trying to block Donald Trump. He could have just simply said, we will not count and sit. And if we have to make a ruling, that's what we'll do. But frankly, it shouldn't come to that. Gosh, we're getting the super chats coming in here. Baron of Gray Matter says, Article 3 restricts district courts to parties before them only. Class action is their only remedy for a wider ruling. Universal injunction is unconstitutional. Yes. So when they do it, see, I'm a man of principles, right? I'm a man of principles. And my principles supersede my ideology. This is an important thing to understand. I think this is true for most conservatives. My principles supersede my ideology. What I mean by that is, if the Supreme Court were to issue a block against the President of the United States, that I would take very seriously. That is what the separation of powers and the checks and balances are all about. If the Supreme Court were to issue an injunction against the President, as it did with Joe Biden, and Joe Biden laughingly ignored it, that's one thing. But these lower courts, there's thousands of judges. You find one of them who simply says, no, bring the plane back? No, we're not bringing the plane back. We're going to ignore you. We're going to pretend we didn't hear it. We're going to pocket veto what you did. So now what are you going to do? You've made an injunction. We don't care. The only injunction that the President of the United States has to pay attention to is an injunction from the Supreme Court. Nothing else has standing. So, Sun Wukong sent a chat earlier. God, I'm trying to catch up on all these things here. Yes, proudest moment was at the boot camp graduation when 9 new Marines were marched up, gave the pledge, and became Americans. To my shock, one of the DIs got it that week too. How about that? He took shrapnel in the face before becoming an American. Thank you for bringing me back to that, Sun Wukong. And I'm sorry I had to have you do another super chat. I'm sorry I missed that. Those kind of stories make me teary-eyed. I love that kind of stuff. That's what I live for. That's my entire. That's the jelly on my peanut butter sandwich, man. I love it. I love it, and I feel very, very strongly about that for the military. And I think that has to. The nice look, you sign up for the military. You may end up being a clerk or a cook or whatever, but when you sign on the dotted line, you are foregoing your right to say, no, I'm not going over there. You never know where you're going to be assigned. So everybody should have that privilege. But when you're dealing with people who are actual combat vets, I mean, this to me is just absolutely, not only should be policy, but should be celebrated. We should have TV shows about that. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. The days of O.J. Simpson, back to the Carmela Anthony thing, the days of O.J. Simpson are long behind us. That was 1995, I want to say. The race card has been maxed out since then. Well maxed out. That race card doesn't have the cachet it had in 1995. So, there you go. Moving on. Broke college student. Topic: deportations and demographics. Hope Bean is doing well. He is. He's having trouble walking. Like I said, he goes around a corner like one of those fire trucks that have a guy steering in the back. But he's walking around and he's healthy enough to be bitching again, and that's a great sign. 92. Wow. 92. Yeah, he'll come in. He's healthy enough to walk in and start complaining about not having any cat food. He's having a hard time keeping the cat food down, and he's losing weight. And again, and thank you for asking, but there's only one end to this story. It's just every single day. I'm just grateful. I take every minute, every second. He walks in the room. Okay, it's another day I've got my cat. So I'm very, very grateful to God for granting this extension, and and let me spend as much time with him as I can. He's a good boy. He's a good boy. I do hug him lots. He's a really, really fine little creature, and I'm glad he's able to stick around for a while. He will let me know when it's time. They let you know. I thought that was it, man. That Monday show we did a week and a half ago or whatever, 2 weeks ago, he wasn't there. You couldn't get a reaction out of him. His, he was basically, pooping almost like clear liquid. And the next day, the day I thought I was going to have to make the call, he just showed up in my bedroom there. And so hooray. What time is it? Let me just check something. He's a good dude. Okay. So here we go. Broke college students, topics, deportations, demographics, low bill. Please read to the end before commenting. I can do that. Can you understand the following position attitude? If you disagree, how do you know your experience with different people groups is not a Potemkin village? A couple of X posts and news stories prompted this, so he's paraphrasing X posts. J.D. Vance, people advocating judicial oversight without consideration for limited resources don't want deportations. Okay. Random commenter. Dallas-Fort Worth area is completely overrun with H-1Bs and is completely unrecognizable. This can't go on. Got 7,000 likes and 400 comments. Personal experience. My wife and I have experienced very liberal friends in college and have been in areas of the city we live in where we rarely heard English being spoken. We both felt more comfortable around the liberals than the foreigners. News report. Black support 500,000 for the black Texas kid who stabbed a twin at a track meet. We're just talking about that. Bail was lowered by a black judge to get him out. Video going around of a black woman walking by and drinking Starbucks while videoing the body of a shot white woman at the recent Florida college shooting. I heard about that. It was Florida State, wasn't it? Question. I think mass legal immigration is as much of a problem as illegal immigration. I do not want immigration visa reform. I want it ended, and I want people to leave. I think multi-ethnic politics probably brings ethnic friction and nepotism. Ethnic tension and conflict has existed before the mainstream media, and many surveys confirm ethnic hatred is largely one way directed towards the majority white population. No question about that. We have no mechanism for removing citizenship, and the 14th Amendment hurts us because of things like visas. I think paleoconservatives were right. For example, Indians have problems with nepotistic hiring, higher rates of falsified certifications, and higher rates of sexual assault. There are many ex-posts from normal guys sharing their negative experience with these problems in IT, trucking, etc. Okay, so that's a bit to unpack. So let's deal with the data, right? If we're gonna have a discussion about morality and ethics and politics and solutions and all the rest, let's at least go to the trouble to make sure that we're standing on factual ground. All right, so let's just look at it that way. I do not know about the crime rate of H-1B visa holders or whatever. I do know about the crime rate in places like Great Britain and Norway and Sweden and all the rest. And there's no question that the huge majority of crimes, especially sexual crimes, are committed by immigrants in those countries. I disagree with you about one or two of these statements, although I agree with the sentiment. Okay, so I am with you in the sentiment. I understand exactly where you're coming from. I think, however, that the issue may be a little bit clouded by not having a clear understanding of what the divisions are. I have said, and I meant it, that I would cheerfully admit 30 million people from around the world who could be proven to want to be Americans. In other words, people from around the world who are ready to bring their culture with them and their background with them, but basically to put all of that down and say, I want to become a new person, I want to become an American. I would take 30 million of those people if I could ship out 30 million Americans who didn't want to be here. If I could swap out 30 million anti-American lefties with 30 million people who are currently waiting in line to enter the United States legally, I'd take that deal. And that is a contravention of what your point is about legal immigration and so on. See, my feeling is that it's not a question of the so much of the country of origin or the background or so on, as it is a question of cultural affinity. Even people from cultures that are not only not aligned with Western culture, but are antithetical to them. For example, there are many people who come to the United States and are real Americans, believe in America, who came from Persia before it became Iran, and those people are American. The Japanese who fought with incredible distinction during World War II and were the most decorated units ever, those Japanese are American citizens. And I'd rather have them here than a bunch of left-wing professors who are not only hate this country, but doing everything they can to destroy it and destroy the youth of this country. So there's that. Now, Marusha Dark says, why not have them take that energy and channel it into fixing their own home countries? Well, the first thing that came to my mind is, why accept the fact that the Titanic is sinking? Why not just grab onto the pennant on the back and tread water and hold it up and try and, there comes a point where individual effort is meaningless. You can't make that argument today and not retroactively apply it. The people that came to this country were all escaping from something. The Pilgrims were escaping political oppression. And the Pilgrims first went to Holland. They had a thriving community in Holland, and apparently people didn't like just how Protestant they were, so they decided, well, I guess we're going to have to try America. So John Pershing is kind of on the cutting edge of where I'm trying to go with this. He says a multi-ethnic society isn't a problem so long as everyone supports the same national culture. It's a multicultural society that can't work. That's actually as beautifully put as I can get it. That to me is the answer. Take a look at that is BS Bill, read my super chat. We had little to no immigration between 1924 and 1965. Won World War II, Korean War, and went to the moon. Stopped all immigration for 10 years. In my humble opinion, we did fine. Well, let's take a look at, none of us were here in World War II, but let's have a look at something like Band of Brothers, which was written by, was written about Dick Winters. The Italian immigrants and all the rest of it, were fighting. The Japanese who had been interred were fighting. It's a temptation to see that and say, no, we just don't need the immigrants. But you can take the whitest, most English German stock in America and find millions of them who are not only communists but are doing everything they can to destroy this country. A related argument is, I would rather be the only white face in America if every other person in the country was black and they were all Thomas Sowell, I'd be in heaven. Right? So now with that said, I'm not so naive or idealistic to ignore the fact that it is absolutely true that many, 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 many people here are coming from countries whose backgrounds are antithetical to the values that I consider to be American values. So I think it's about the I think it's more about the software than the hardware. Eric Blake says, precisely, it doesn't matter the ethnicity of the immigrants if they say we only speak English in this house. That's what's changed. See, this is the thing that I think is important. When the Irish came, they were despised. When the Germans came, they were despised. When the Italians came, they were despised. And everybody was despised, but they were all in it saying, yes, we speak Italian because we're from the mother country, but our kids are going to speak English. That works. But somewhere in the 60s, once the left started infiltrating all of the cultural institutions, we started getting, for the first time ever with Cuban immigrants, we started getting instead of them having to conform to our culture, we're going to conform to theirs. This is when we started getting in trouble, was when we started getting into press 1 for English, press 2 for Spanish. That's when we got in trouble. That should never have happened, ever. That should never, ever have happened. Hang on, this was a message I'm waiting for. Just one second. Sorry. My lovely wife, who just drove up to Lake Arrowhead, and it's a difficult drive, and so on. So that's when we started getting into trouble. Once we started offering English as second language, and once it went past making it easier for immigrants to assimilate, and got to the point where they don't have to assimilate anymore. And so all of these toxic subcultures, including domestic toxic subcultures, lots of which are happening in the black community. A lot of it has become, they've been told, that they've been told, the 2 generations of American blacks have been told that they built this country, and white people just sat on the porch and watched them build it, and then we took it away from them. And all of this Afrocentric kind of, we were all kings, and we had empires, and we had all these gleaming cities, and the white men came and destroyed it, and black people invented all of this stuff. It's just not true. So I am proud to live in a country that produced Booker T. Washington. Very proud to live in a country that produced Booker T. Washington. And if you haven't seen America's Forgotten Heroes, or heard it, because we never did film that, but if you get a chance, go look for America's Forgotten Heroes on your favorite podcast, should be there, and look up the episode I did on Booker T. Washington. I don't believe there's ever been a man alive in this country, and I'm about willing to include George Washington in this, who had a better sense of character than Booker T. Washington. Does that mean that I don't see the toxicity in modern black culture, and the resentment and the anger and the rage and all this, and this defense of this guy who sunk a knife into this kid's chest? It's outrageous, and BLM is outrageous, and all of that stuff is outrageous. But you can't just say, I'm dodging the point, we did excellent from 1924 to 1965 without immigrants. Well, the immigrants who came up to 1924 fought in World War II. And I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you. We got here in 1915, so I guess we just made the cut. Guess we got lucky, the Whittles. See, I'm not one of these guys who says let everybody. I'm not one of these guys who say we should have open immigration from all different countries. I think we should have heavily weighted immigration on countries that are culturally aligned with Western civilization, because that's where we're from. That we should be getting most of our immigrants from places like Northern Europe, and really most of Europe, Eastern Europe. I know a lot of people, Poles, Bulgarians, Romanians, Czechs especially, who are just really on top of it. I know a lot of Ukrainians in this country, and they're hardworking people who get it. So that's not the problem. The problem, what do you do? The problem isn't the immigrants. Let me rephrase that. In many cases, the problems are the immigrants. But the immigration thing isn't the issue. The issue is, what do you do with the 30 million Americans who were here between 1924 and 1965 and who were determined to destroy the country? What do you do about them? They're the problem. So I think you're missing the target. I think that the target needs to be the attitude. And I think if you judge people by their attitudes, you don't have a problem identifying who needs to stay and who needs to go. It's not that simple. Like I said, the example of the Japanese are really data point. Barron says we can't. It says in caps, by the way, he's shouting, "We cannot support any more people. Why add more logs to the fire?" Well, first of all, I'm not entirely sure about that. Secondly, look, let me be clear on this, okay? I've looked this up. Take a look. Instead of looking at when immigrants came or when they didn't, take a look at the list of countries that people are coming from. And if you look at 1950 and 1960, 1970 even, you will find that almost all the top 10 countries that immigrants are coming to the United States from are places like Canada, England, Scotland, maybe Russia, Germany, this kind of thing. When you look at it in 2020, the top 10 countries are Venezuela, Colombia, African countries, all of this stuff. It's like, that's the problem. The problem is that these people are coming in without the cultural background to be able to assimilate here. They're not able to assimilate. They don't have the cultural language. We found this out in the early 2000s when we thought we could bring democracy and republic to places like Iraq and Afghanistan. That was an experiment which returned data. Baron of Gray Matter says they can't read. Okay, I agree. I completely agree. We don't need people like that here. I'm in complete agreement. Look, these people, the left seems to think, first of all, the Statue of Liberty's plaque is not a constitutional, it's a poem. Give us your poor, your huddled masses learning to. That's not law. That's not, and that's not even national policy. That's a poem that sounds nice at the base of the Statue of Liberty. But what I'm trying to say is that the left is saying, give us only your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The teeming refuse of your wretched shore, give us only them. That's what the left is saying. And this is insane. That's not what it says. It's not what it says. And I think absolutely we have taken in too many people who are not culturally acclimated to this country. We've taken in too many of them, and they're not being assimilated. And that has been an enormous mistake. So there's not really an argument here. If you ask me if I'm defending the immigration policies of the last 30, 40 years, I'm not. I'm completely, they've damn near destroyed the country. But let's be accurate about the target, right? What is it that we're actually shooting at? And this is where I come back to the number of people who are not immigrants at all, domestic Americans born in this country, who are trying to destroy this country. I'd swap 30 million of them out for people that really genuinely want to come here. I'd be there 100% of the way. We need to help them where they live. We can't support the infrastructure to house them here. They need to find their own Thomas Jefferson. Well, what about my wife then? What's your advice on her? I'm just curious. The cut them off people. What do I say to my wife? Dave Big Booty says 9's above can stay. That's probably not a bad thing. But I'm serious. So tell me what to do with my wife. Natasha had a sponsor. Oh, you mean she did it? Baron of Grey Matter says my wife is a German green card holder since 1980. So does she go? If we're full, what do we say? See, this is why I said she married me and came here with me. Yes, my wife married me and came here to stay too. DJ CJ says, Bill, some form of legal immigration is fine. That's all I'm saying. I'm not defending what we've seen. Don't make it about your wife. Why not? Why not make it about my wife? My wife's an American citizen. My wife earned her citizenship. So why not make it about her? She's a lot more American than anybody that's ever joined a BLM march. So she has to go, and they stay. She pays taxes. She isn't a drag on the system. So again, you're not talking about immigration. You're talking about these specific kinds of people that have been allowed and encouraged to come into this country. That's not about immigration. That's about the immigration policy. Thank you, I will. P7. Because I've seen her talk about this country, and I've seen her, well, first of all, I saw her work her ass off to get that 100 out of 100 on the test. But Baron of Grey Matter said, I said no more for 10 years. Well, there's no question we need to sort this out, right? There's no question we need to sort it out. But I think this is a case of justifiable anger that is not as precisely focused as perhaps it should be. Because I'm telling you, you're not going to get an argument about the flooding of people from around the world who have no business being here because they're not here to contribute, they're here to take. So I bet when you really get down to it, if you really got this thing down to the brass tacks, there wouldn't be much disagreement here. I don't find myself particularly enjoying defending immigration policy when immigration policy has been so ass backwards for 30, 40 years. No more open immigration for 10 years. I'm against open immigration. If you mean open immigration, border crossings and all that other stuff, obviously, I don't want a single person coming into this country who's not coming in through ports of entry. And I think we have a right to be picky about who we let into the house. A.K.A. Woody Fool says the Haitian friends would love to stay, but they have no idea how to understand the trust economy. Yes, what it really means is they're not capable of being Americans. They don't have the cultural language for it. So, Tranquility Bay says we're not full. Like when we faced with the mass influx of Cubans in Miami when we were in Coral Gables High School, the area was overloaded. That was not an effective plan to distribute the influx over the entire nation. This is something else too. Bill asking about what about my wife is the difference between special pleading for an individual versus what should be mass policy at scale. What do you mean special pleading? It's not special pleading. It's making the case. If you're saying that all immigration has to stop, then what about her? You saying no? I don't think you can have it both ways, man. You know, I just think it's I think we have to be very, very careful about being connected to reality and understanding that reality is occasionally nuanced. I don't want a special agreement for my wife to stay. I want people who are going to be good Americans to be able to come to this country legally and go through the 7-year process it took us. Not to mention the thousands of dollars and the amount of time and all the rest of it. I'm not arguing for anything other than that. So I really honestly think that almost all of this is not a disagreement. I think it's just a question of terms not being properly defined. Can't do anything about people already here. It's about policy going forward. Okay. Well, I'll just close it the way I opened it. I'll take a person who is an American at heart from overseas over one who's a communist and was born in Lexington, Massachusetts. So, moving on. Bob Neef. Today's the 55th anniversary of the return of Apollo 13. I was 13 years old when Apollo 13 happened. At 13 and living in the heartland, Minnesota, before the wackadoodles. Wackadoodles is the problem. I believed in American ingenuity and success. As a result, I really don't remember having much concern about getting the crew back safely. After all, that's just what America did. I thought it was sad that they couldn't land on the moon. It wasn't until years later that I realized just how dire the situation was. What are your memories of Apollo 13? Oh, and I hope you find some time to listen to the flight director's loop of Apollo 13. Such fascinating history. You'll love it. I was in Bermuda for Apollo 13, so it didn't. No, I wasn't. No, I wasn't. No, I was in Florida. I was back in Florida. We were in Bermuda. We moved to Florida. Then we moved back to Bermuda. Then we moved back to Florida. I saw the launch of Apollo 13. I was at Cape Kennedy. My dad drove the family up to Cape Kennedy, which is what it was called at the time, and I watched Apollo 13 go off the pad. I don't have a lot of memories about the crisis. It may be because I wasn't really watching as much news. I knew there was something wrong. It was, 3 days, I guess, 4 maybe. Maybe it was even longer than that. Between the time of the explosion and getting him back, it was probably closer to 5 or 6 now I think about it. But yes, I do. I'm with you on this one, Bob. I thought, okay, well, they're not dead, right? No, then we'll get them back, the little that I do recall of the news then was that it was less sensational than it was now, and so there wasn't, and there wasn't 24-hour news. I mean, there was the evening newscast at 6 o'clock, then, and we would find out what the update was. So it wasn't like we were. If Apollo 13 were to be happening now, we'd have 24-hour opinion on everything, and the actual news would be updated at about the same rate. There'd be something significant every 24 hours or so. But back then, fortunately, news was in its little box that it belonged in when you wanted to find out what was going on in the world today, instead of being this 24-hour loudspeaker of propaganda telling you what to think. It was you know, in the movie they say it was NASA's finest moment, and it may have been NASA's. It wasn't NASA's finest moment. Apollo 11 was NASA's finest moment. It was Ingenuity's finest moment. The scene in Apollo 13, there's really just one scene in Apollo 13, as far as I'm concerned, that was really about Apollo 13, and that's the scene where all the engineers are there at Mission Control in Houston, and this guy dumps out this bag and he says, "We have to make one of these fit into one of these using this." That's the story of Apollo 13. Because to be perfectly honest with you, the crew suffered a lot of hardships, and needless to say, they didn't panic. But Apollo 13 is not about the crew. Apollo 11 was about the crew. Neil Armstrong took over the lander on that thing. Apollo 11 was about the crew. But 13 was about ground control. And Lovell, Hayes, and Swigert were passengers. Gene Kranz and I cannot remember the name of those other two guys, but the electrical system guy, I cannot believe I've forgotten his name. I really have to have that tattooed on my arm because I'm sick of forgetting his name. That was America doing what America did best, and that wasn't huge. John Aaron, yeah, wasn't huge think tanks. It wasn't like the team at Boeing. It was like, no, we don't have time to go to these guys. We here in this room have to figure out to make one of these fit into one of those. And meanwhile, Ken Mattingly is in the simulator with John Aaron trying to figure out a way to start these electrical systems up without going over whatever the insanely low, was it 6 watts or 1.5 watts or whatever the pulse was. Oh, wait. I can't believe it. It's been sitting here this whole time. I'm so glad I remembered it. If I found out it earlier, I would have lost my mind. Ta-da! I'll say it again. I'll show it again. It's also wired. You can get the whole panel. And I also got this, although I was hoping against hope that I wouldn't have to wire this up. But I got 2 pieces. I got that and I got this one. Come on. Also got this little groovy light. I wish this light, I'm going to have to figure out a way to wire this so that this light goes on once we go live. Because once we go live, it'd be really cool if that came on, you know. There you go. Yep. Company's called Concord Aerospace. Let me see if I can find their link. They got all kinds of cool stuff. They've got a lot of Apollo stuff. They also have things like the throttle quadrant from the Millennium Falcon and things like that. Hang on. Let me drop a link. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, this is really cool. I saw this on Facebook and I ordered those. Here comes the link, folks. You can get all kinds of different panels and windows and cool stuff. I don't think anybody's fiddling with the light switch. I think it's automatic light adjustment on the camera. There you go. Yeah, they've got all kinds of cool stuff. They've got like the triangular windows from the LEM. And they've got like the ludicrous speed button from, you know, Spaceballs. So they're just having fun. There's one that says chemtrails on or off. It looks like an Apollo switch. So you get the idea. But yeah, they're a fun company, and I love these two things. I just have to figure out how to get them in there. Fire Waco says I spent way too much time in front of the control panels. Pass. I hear you, brother. Okay, moving on. Hey, look, it's Fire Waco. With all the justified deportations of illegal aliens that have snuck into this country, what about those that have pending asylum claims? And it goes on. Can I assume that we've covered that by now? When you flicked the switch, someone went, "Who turned out the lights?" I see. Sorry. I'm going to Fire Waco. I think we pretty much beat that into the ground. So there you go. Janie Waterman. Hello. Clavin said on his show that JFK was a horrible man, a rapist, etc. Consumed a lot of your comment. I've spoken a lot about JFK and family. I don't recall you mentioning this about him. Is Clavin right? Thank you. Well, Teddy, no question. Oh, I'm sorry. Fari Waco had an idea at the end there, so let me finish the question. How many are, with all the justified deportations of illegal aliens that have snuck into this country, what about those that have pending asylum claims? How many are they, and will a court ever be able to hear their case? I'm sure the previous administrations have millions that need to be adjudicated. How hard are the majority of these cases? I suspect that it wouldn't take much instruction for an average citizen to be able to hold an asylum hearing. Probably not much more instructions than are given to a juror during a criminal trial. Why not have an obligatory citizen duty to serve for civic hearings like this? Seems to work fine for jury duty. Why not asylum hearing duty? That would get the easiest cases resolved quickly, leaving more complicated cases for the established courts. And Sung Wukong sent a super chat on Apollo 11 earlier. True story, Apollo. Sorry, I got 5 things I got to catch up with now. True story that Apollo 13 scene where the team made a square fit into a circle was actually one engineer that did it in his head while driving to work. Okay, I have not heard that story. Marginally disappointed about that, but in any event, they still had to come up with the procedures and the order and all the rest of it. So it'd be great to know who that guy was because, well, he kept him alive long enough so that the next guy could take over keeping him alive. I agree. Well, first of all, I don't know if I agree with civic duty. I've been on 3 juries. Well, I'm sorry, I've been called for jury duty 3 times. I've been, I was impaneled once, I think, and one time I was actually on the jury and I was the jury foreman. I volunteered to be the jury foreman. Even this was, 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I was shocked at how poor the quality of jurors was. Now, this is in Los Angeles, right? If I was in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, I'm sure it would have been an entirely different experience. But here, everybody was convinced that the police were lying because otherwise there'd be no twist. Too many people seen too many episodes of CSI. There's always got to be a twist. It's not a good story if there's not a twist. So it's like, of course the cop is lying. What makes you think he's lying? Well, you can't. The person who they said did it couldn't have done it. Why not? Because it's too obvious. Good Lord. I had to fight for that. We got 1 conviction. It was 2 counts of obstruction of justice. The police started arresting a bunch of these gangbangers, and one of their girlfriends went and assaulted this police officer, and I couldn't believe some of the things I was hearing. My strongest ally in getting that one conviction, because there was no question that she did it. They admitted that she did it. Otherwise, the presumption of innocence would have prevailed. But there was no question that the defense, and I had to explain this to people, the defense was that she was too small. that the police were these big, huge guys, and the defense attorney said, "My client is 5'2" and weighs 100 pounds. There's no way she could have interfered with the policeman's operation of his duty." And I just said to myself, so you admit that she assaulted the police officer. You're just arguing that she wasn't strong enough to have stopped him from arresting the when you come out of the gate saying, yes, my client did what she's accused of, then no. And I had to remind people of that. And then they started all this speculation about other things. It's like, you can't consider that. Well, why not? Because it's not introduced as evidence. We can only make this decision based on what we heard in the courtroom. There was not the slightest mention about a conspiracy or whatever the hell they were talking about. It was work. And my strongest ally was this elderly black woman who also was convinced that this is just open and shut. So I guess we split the difference, and we got one count conviction, and the other count was dismissed. But Fiery Waco says, if citizens are good enough to potentially put a man to death, they should be good enough to hold an asylum hearing. That sounds like well, you're right. First of all, there's no qualifications on it. I'm not backing that down. Okay? I'm not walking that back. That's an excellent argument. If citizens are good enough to put a man to death, they should be good enough to hold an asylum hearing. You win. No hard feelings. That's a killer argument, and I agree. But with that said, the quality of citizens has declined. The quality of citizens' ability to reason and to judge a case on its merits has declined enormously since the advent of crime dramas and since the demise of civics classes. So there you go. So hopefully, yes, you're right. If a jury's good enough to decide life and death matters, then they're good enough to decide asylum. I think that if you were to take a look at the total number of asylum claims, I bet you could dismiss 50% of them very quickly. Very quickly. As being obviously false. But, I don't want to reopen this whole thing, but there are things that there are qualities to the country that I think are essential to its being America. And one of them is the idea that it can be an asylum, and that the idea of returning somebody to their certain death in a communist regime or whatever the case may be, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that country. What I want the flooding of illegal immigration to stop. I want us to stop. It was Ted Kennedy that rewrote the immigration laws that completely changed the quota system from countries that are sympathetic to or culturally identical to the United States, namely Western countries. It's Ted Kennedy who changed it to third world countries because prosperous people came and voted Republican. This was all Ted Kennedy's doing. So anyway, that was that. I'll go back to Janie's JFK question. Still got a lot to do. Jeez. Wow. Look, I don't know if John Kennedy was a rapist. I don't know. I know that it was look, when I say it was a different time, I'm not saying that it's like, well, rape's okay. I'm saying I don't know. But to say that he was a horrible man, I don't agree with Andrew on that. I don't think he was a horrible man. I'm just giving this a great deal of thought. I thought his handling of the Cuban Missile Crisis was about as good as it could get. I think ask not is a noble thing to say, and I think not because it is easy, but because it is hard, is inspired. I think that sentence is one of the most powerful sentences uttered in American political history. I'm sure Andrew has problems with his morality, but I've noticed that is a conservative byproduct. Government says all of the Kennedys are horrible people. I don't know. John, I don't know. I don't see evil intent in him in terms of the country, right? His personal failings are one thing. I think Barack Obama was determined to remake this country as a Marxist country. I think that Woodrow Wilson was determined to remake this country as an elitist socialist country. I don't see that in Kennedy. And I don't see. I thought Lyndon Johnson was a much more destructive president than John Kennedy. So I don't to say he was a horrible man and a rapist and so on. I don't know. I've heard people talk. Roadrunner mentioned PT 109. There's a movie, a book, and so on, and I've heard people say that Kennedy should have been court-martialed for incompetence. To have a PT boat get run over by a destroyer is almost inconceivable. And I've also, and there's that point that is a point to be made. I also think that what Kennedy did after his boat got rammed, broken back and he swimming a guy to shore, that sounds a little bit different than his younger brother, frankly, doesn't it? I mean, John Kennedy would be a conservative today. No. Eric says, I seem to recall when Clavin was saying that he was making the same point I'm making. JFK had personal issues, but he was a cold warrior in the right place at the right time. I'm trying to think of presidents who didn't have personal issues. Ronald Reagan strikes me as a man of moral integrity. Richard Nixon, not so much. Gerald Ford, I thought, had tremendous personal integrity. Lyndon Johnson, not so much. There's no question John Kennedy was a womanizer, but it's also, I mean, how are you not? Calvin Coolidge, great guy. I think Harry Truman had a great deal of personal integrity, although I disagree with an awful lot about Harry Truman. So I would not say he was a horrible man. And if you're going to accuse somebody of rape, you better have evidence that'd stand up in court. And I haven't seen that evidence, so I'm going to let that sit with that, and I hope that's enough answer for you. Astrosea, who's all of a sudden made appearance everywhere, and it's good to see new names here and so on. Howdy, Bill. You'd once mentioned concerning how to be a man when given the option between the smart decision and the right decision that one must make the latter. Could you explain how those might be different? Given my limited life experience, I can't see a difference between those two options. Many thanks from a deeply admiring Gen Zer and proud new member. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. Very kind of you. Let's see if I can think of an example that would occur to me. The first thing that comes to mind. Let's say that you're a good person and you've always done the right thing, and you find $100 bills on the ground someplace, $100 bill, and you need the money. You desperately, desperately need the money. Let me rephrase that, because let me rephrase that. I don't mean to paint myself in this light. It's the only example I can think of when this subject came up. I spent a great deal of my life in real financial trouble, real financial need. And I went shopping, grocery shopping. I was probably, let's see, that would have been 90, where was I then? I was probably 26, 27 years old, something like that. And I had saved up I had like $200, and I went and bought a lot of groceries, which were going to get me through pretty much most of the month. So I went down to the supermarket, and I bought $200 worth of groceries, and they rang me up, and I got my bags, I put them in the car, drove home, put the groceries up on the shelf. Something had happened, and then I looked in my wallet, and the $200 was still in my wallet. And I realized that I had struck up a conversation with the cashier, and that while we were having this conversation, the cashier was bagging the groceries. And we said, okay, see you later. And he said, okay, bye. And I just walked out. And I hadn't paid for the groceries because he hadn't asked for the money. We were just so deep into this conversation that it just kind of got to the end of the groceries. And we both had thought that I'd already paid because I was at the end of the line, and I had my bags in the cart, and I just went out there. So I needed that money really badly. And what I did was I got back in the car, and I went back to the supermarket. And here's where we get to the point now. And the supermarket was closed. And I knocked on the door, and nobody came. And I sat there, and I kept pounding on the door until the manager showed up. And it took a while. I mean, I was there for like 10 minutes, intermittently knocking. And the guy said, "We're closed." And I said, "Yeah, I understand that. Listen, I was here, told him the story of what happened." And I said, I got the groceries, and I didn't pay for them because we just plain missed it. And the guy said, "We were trying to figure out what had happened to the register. We couldn't figure out where the discrepancy was. I didn't think it was the cashier. I knew he was an honest guy, but we just didn't know what the hell happened. Thank you very much." So I paid for the groceries and went home. There are people who would say that it wasn't, that I didn't go in there to steal the groceries, and that certainly going back to the supermarket, banging on the door and not getting an answer could count as due diligence. In other words, you made an effort to do the right thing, but I just couldn't do it. The example that is maybe easier to understand is if you're in traffic and there's a long line of cars to get off on the ramp and you need to be on that ramp. Now, sometimes there's a line of cars and I didn't realize that this is the ramp I need to take, and then I've had to merge in towards the front of the line and felt super guilty about that. But if you're in a hurry, not an emergency, but if you're in a hurry, the smart thing to do is to go to the front of that line and merge yourself in. That's the smart thing to do. It's not the right thing to do, but it's the smart thing to do. And so this is the difference between doing the smart thing and the right thing. You'll find many things where the smart thing is you can do something that, it doesn't even have to be something wrong. It's not like you're doing something wrong so much as you're not doing something right. AKA Woody Fool says a zipper merge is the correct move. Well, if there's a line of cars that have already merged and they're in the line to get off the freeway, and you go to the front of that line and try to merge in there, I don't consider that to be the right thing to do. But that's a definitional thing. There are cases where you can a zipper merge is what it's supposed to be. one car, the other car, one car, the other car. But I'm talking about a situation where all of the cars are lined up in the lane. We're not talking about a merge. I'll give you a perfect example based on what Marusha said. This is real. This really happened to me. During COVID, on 3 separate occasions, my bank offered me substantial amount of money which I needed for this company, and the loan, they were very clear. They said, we consider this a loan, but if you're not able to pay it back, you're under no obligation to do it. It was free money. And I turned it down 3 times. And I turned it down 3 times because my business is not dependent on street traffic. My business was not affected by COVID. You could make a case that COVID probably helped my business because people were inside more, watching more content. So on 3 separate occasions, I turned down free money that was offered to me by a bank because I didn't think that I deserved it. I didn't think that I was an appropriate recipient for this. I think there were people that definitely did need it. I saw a lot of restaurants close during those days. A lot of restaurants closed. Those guys needed the money. And all of these stores needed the money. And my feeling was, if I take this money, that's less money for other people who need it. And as much as I'd like to have the free money, I couldn't justify being worthy of it. So I turned it down. And I really needed it. And lost a lot of sleep over, keeping the doors open here. So the smart thing to do would have been to take the money, because there's people who are rolling in money who took it. Rolling in money who took it. That's why they're rolling in money. But it just felt wrong to me. And this was a tough thing to explain to my wife. Because she's a very honest person too, but she was basically saying, listen, they're handing this to you. There is a pandemic on, but I just said, honey, I can't do it. I just can't do it. So, Oprah took it. I'm sure she did. So that's a question of, the smart thing versus the right thing. I didn't steal let's say I had taken it. Okay. If I had taken it, I wouldn't have stolen it. I wouldn't have fraudulently applied for it. In other words, the bank didn't say to me, if your business is a business that is affected by COVID, then you are eligible for this loan. They just said it's available to everybody who owns a company. They didn't tell me that I had to qualify for it. They simply said, here it is. And that to me just seemed like it wasn't the right thing to do. And I still am glad that I didn't take it. Although when you hear things like Oprah taking it and all the rest of it, I could be, based on what I think the numbers they were talking about, I could be $100,000 further down the road if I had simply said yes to when the bank emailed me and asked me if I wanted this stuff. But I didn't. This is the kind of example I'm interested in. You Busted Half Nickel Swamp says, if you found $200,000 cash in a bank parking lot and there were no witnesses or camera footage, the money was accidentally left behind by a Brinks truck, would you take it? No. If it was in a bank parking lot, I would return it to the bank. Now, the interesting question is, what if you found it on the side of the road? I think I would probably do something like, I think what I would probably do if I found 200 grand on the side of the road. Well, first of all, 200 grand. I would sit there for hours looking for somebody looking for the money. There comes a point when, I'll tell you what, one thing I have done once was I think I would have turned it into the police. One thing I have done once is I found a watch that was sitting someplace really obvious, and I picked up that watch and took it to I think it was a mall, the center opposite the mall, because I knew that if I didn't take this watch and turn it in, somebody else was going to take it and keep it. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a thing, man. And you know, I mean, I've told this story before, and I'm proud of myself for it. And I'm proud that I had parents who put that into me that way. It's a rare quality that used to be virtually universal in this country. But that's a case of, especially the case of the bank. From a business point of view, the smart thing to do would have been to take the money. That would have been probably the smart thing to do. So hopefully that helps. And it's great to see you there, Astrosea, and thank you very much for the membership. And it's always great to have Gen Zers around, and I'm really looking forward to talking more with Gen Zers and so on. Richard Burton says, years ago I was broke, guy couldn't pay me, had babies at home. I came across coins in the street from obviously a bag that fell off a truck. I filled my pockets, cashed in, fed the kids, and got gas. Well, the difference between you and me there, Richard, is not a question of our moral character. It's a question of you had kids. If I had kids, I would have kept the grocery money. If it came down to feeding I had the luxury of not having to feed my family. So I had the luxury of being able to do the right thing. I think you did the right thing. Because you have, I think we both did the right thing. Even though the outcomes are different, I think we both did the right thing. You had to take care of your family. And when you find money there like that, that's it. Karma is interesting, though. I've said this before. When I was in college, I'd lost financial aid, and my dad, who was going to told me his whole life is going to basically put me through college. And then when it came time to go through college, he didn't have the money. Didn't have the money because most all of his money was in a coin collection, which got stolen from my grandmother's house, we think by a family member who was doing a lot of drugs. So I was really hungry, really hungry. I was 6'1" and I weighed 119 pounds. So I was really, really, really skinny and really hungry for years. And one night I woke up and I didn't have a penny, and I mean a penny to my name. And I woke up at about 2 or 3 in the morning, and I was just so bloody hungry, and it was cold. Gainesville can get cold in the winter. And I got on my bike, and I decided I was going to go to where some of these drive-through windows were and see if anybody dropped any change there. So I kind of went around there and cruised around there and didn't find anything. And on the way home, I decided to cut through campus, and I stopped. University of Florida's got this gigantic, huge classroom complex called, at the time it was called GPA, General Purpose Building A. And there's a breezeway that went through the center of this building on ground level. It was filled with vending machines. So I thought, I'll try the vending machines and see if there's any change that got left in the corner there. Because that's how hungry I was. That's how broke I was. And I went to check those vending machines, and as I came into this breezeway, I'm not making this up, sitting in the middle, like in the geometric center of this breezeway, was a dollar bill that had been folded into quarters. It's just a square about that big, just a dollar bill. It'd been placed there by like an ad agency for a photograph kind of thing. It just sat there, a dollar bill. And I picked up that dollar bill, and I rode my bike to Krispy Kreme Donuts, and I bought 4 apple-filled donuts for $1, and my God, that was the most, well, first of all, Krispy Kreme apple filled donut is about as close to God's food as you're going to find on this earth, but those were delicious. And in the several times that I've been back to Gainesville since then, I've made it a point to go back to GPA late at night and leave $1 on the ground there, because I figure, you never know who's going to need it. And I remember the taste of those donuts. They had a lot of cinnamon in them. My God, they were freaking fabulous, fantastic. But yeah, if I ever go back again, I'll go and leave. I almost said I'd leave $5, but I'll leave $1. $1's good. Yeah, that was a real low point for me, and kind of a high point too. Pay it forward, man. Absolutely. Yeah, Krispy Kreme apple donuts are delicious. Type 2 diabetes in a bite. Yeah, we all got to go sometime, man. And and better to go out on a Krispy Kreme apple-filled donut than on a cracker. So there you go. I did. Did I fold the $1 into a square? I did. Yes, and I put it right where I found it. I just figured out we're square now. Thank you. Appreciate the loan, and went on. That's a true story. That actually happened that way. Dave Big Booty said you should. I'm sorry. Coconut ED5 said you should make that into an animated short. It would make a good story. It's absolutely true. You can't make up that story, but that's exactly, precisely what happened. Okay, let's see how we're doing here. We got Capital G Greek, Steve Young, Marusha Dark. No, we already did a Marusha Dark. We got Eric Blake. Okay, we'll get them done. Wow, Veronica says I found 1,100 on the ground once at Pachanga in the Round Bar area. That's a nice day. So Eric Blake has a story about who he did pretty much the same thing. So anyway, moving on. Capital G Geek, greetings from the swamps of Northern Virginia. That's as many hours as it's going to take to get through it, by God. George says, imagine if it was windy and you had to chase that $1 across the parking lot like Mr. Bean trying to catch a chicken. I would have dove after that $1 bill. I would have dove face first after that. That was a miracle. It really was. I don't know what else to call it. It was just, like I said, it was like a photo shoot. Somebody put it there. It was incredible. Greetings from the swamps of Northern Virginia. There was a stabbing at a high school track meet recently that brought back up something that the government has been doing for a long time now. A day later, the father made a public statement that this is not a race thing. This is a frequent event where a white victim of a minority crime speaks out against racial hatred. The Ohio father whose son was killed by a Haitian who later said he wishes that his son was killed by an old white man comes to mind. Oh, for the love of God. The self-hatred among the left is unbelievable. Just the sheer neurotic bat guano craziness of them is just overwhelming sometimes. It's long been suspected that this was a result of the DOJ's Community Relations Service, whose goal is to soothe racial tensions. They're also suspected of being the group behind the Religion of Peace mantra after 9/11. Yeah, I remember that. They cooperated with the Rumor Control Center during the Civil Rights era, etc. They've recently been closed. Good. Do you find this egregious? Yes. Are they pushing peace at the expense of truth? Yes. Is that ever acceptable? No. Truth wins every time. There are many stories like this, but the one that comes to mind is, I think it was in Sweden, it might have been in Norway, but a blonde Swedish woman was talking about how unfair everything was to all these new migrants who were arriving from, sub-Saharan Africa or Morocco or Yemen or wherever the hell they were coming from. And this beautiful blonde woman decided to go and show the immigrants that not everybody was as racist as she assumed that they were. So she went down there to this immigrant center and was promptly gang raped for hours. And when she managed to limp home, instead of calling the police, she called her friends who were also liberals. And the friends all said, you cannot report this to police because if you do, it will look bad for the immigrants. It'll make them look bad. That's not, I am as far away from that as it comes. That is insanity. Insanity. To not talk about these things is insanity. Last time I did a college speaking event, which was a long time ago now, I got into it with this black chick, and she said, I heard you say that you care more about Black Lives than Black Lives Matter does. I said, I obviously do. And she said, how are you going to explain that? And I said, well, Black Lives Matter is about police shooting black people. And latest FBI statistics say that that's 4% of all black fatalities, black murders. 4% is shooting by policemen. And that includes, by the way, if a guy walks up to a police car and shoots a policeman in the head and the policeman returns fire and kills that guy, it includes that. So it's not just policemen just plain opening fire on innocent people. And I said, if your entire movement is about 4% of the problem, and you not only don't address the other 96%, you actively suppress it, then that's not a serious movement. You're not serious about Black lives. You have a political agenda. Because if you're really about Black Lives Matter, you would be going to where the majority of black murders occur, which is black on black crime, and there's no disputing that. That doesn't mean they all just said, "Boy, this guy's right," but basically, yes. If you want to deal with the problem, you got to know what the problem is, and you have to talk about the problem. And to ignore the truth because it hurts people's feelings is to perpetuate the pathology. It's chicken shit, and it's destructive. I have decided a long time ago that I was going to stand where the truth was, and that was going to be my shield. So it really is kind of damn the torpedoes. Now, I'm not saying I'm right all the time, but I'm right most of the time. And if I think I'm right, then that's what I'm going to do. There's a lot of things that are unpleasant that we've been told we can't talk about by people who benefit by not talking about them. And I'm with you on this. No, if it's a racial hate crime, call it out. And there you go. Yeah. So hopefully that handled it. Steve Young, good evening, Bill. Letitia James, the New York Attorney General that had criticized Donald Trump, that had citizen Donald Trump prosecuted, has allegedly claimed she is married to her father on an official mortgage application. Question, what might give her an idea that daddy is her husband? Graft and grift. I saw her giving a speech a couple days ago, or yesterday, and she's shouting at the top of her lungs that she's not going to be kept down by the president or anybody else. That sounds like a guilty person who's trying very hard to escape the jaws of justice. I think Donald Trump is and Pam Bondi are looking very, very, very carefully at Letitia James. And I think Letitia James is crooked as the day is long. I think that they had to go way, 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 way down the criminal justice ladder to find somebody who was willing to do that kangaroo court and railroad somebody. And I think that justice is going to prevail. And I'd like to see her in jail where she belongs. And I'd like to see it overturned to some degree. Corpseman Tall Guy here says, Bill, I warmly invite you to visit our nearest Eastern Orthodox parish for their Pascha service, Easter service. It'll start late Saturday night, go to 1 a.m. Then we have a giant party. I've been to Eastern Orthodox services with Natasha. Where are you located, Corman? Because I enjoyed my time in the Eastern Orthodox Church. My understanding is it's the fastest growing religious denomination in the U.S. Probably because they seem to take it seriously. Let's see. Marusha, we did one already. I'm sorry, I'm a little burned out to do two. We got an Eric Blake, and then we're done. I'll keep an eye on that to see where that very kind invitation came from. So here's Eric Blake. Tonight, the case of the clandestine canines. So, Bill, in a recent Right Angle, you guys talked about the genetically engineered return of the dire wolf. Now, here's an element of the story I haven't heard too many people talk about, and if they do, it's pretty much as an aside. the U.S. government, specifically the CIA, was involved in the project. Okay, so here's the obvious question. What was the government hoping to get out of this? Frankly, though, my first thought immediately went to canine super soldiers, bigger, stronger, able to survive in harsh environments. The only question, of course, being if a direwolf can be trained to have the same discipline and loyalty as a standard German Shepherd canine. What do you think? Well, first of all, I'm not sure they actually brought back the dire wolf. I mean, my understanding was that it was the kind of thing where they're trying to bring back the mammoth, and the way they bring back the mammoth is they pull some DNA out of a mammoth, and then they implant that in an egg, and then the egg is given birth by an elephant, and there's elephant DNA in there, and they keep upping the amount of DNA that's mammoth DNA, but they'll never get complete mammoth DNA. So, I don't know. I don't suspect that if the CIA was involved with the project, I don't know what the hell they would be doing with it. I suppose that's one possible explanation. I suspect that the CIA's involvement has more to do with gene splicing technologies that would be used for, microbial bioweapons. So to whatever degree the CIA was involved with that company, which has got an incredible name, what is it? Colossus, I think. I'm sure that they are much more interested in the actual techniques than they are in the direwolf thing. Kirk's Bamboo Bazooka says he's not dire, he's mostly dire, and there's a big difference. Yeah. So I don't think that it was that they were looking at the wolves. I think the thing that probably mostly has to do with it is, I think, to the degree that the CIA was involved, I suspect they're interested in the technology. Now, that begs a different question, but that leaves the entire table of possibilities open. I would suspect that it's got to do with biodefense. That's what I would probably do. Mercy says, what I find interesting about Jurassic Park is how in the later movies people got bored of dinosaurs. Yep, colossal. Not Colossus, colossal. Yeah. So I don't know, Eric. Wolfman Soldiers. There's a Wolfman Soldier episode on Love, Death, and Robots, which apparently has a 4th season coming up. First season was awesome. Second season was pretty good. Third season was real hit and miss. But a 4th season of Love, Death, and Robots is something I'm looking forward to. I haven't seen it in a couple years. Some of those episodes are great. In fact, almost all of them are thought-provoking and good, but some are better than others. So I guess that's it. Hey, look at that. We're at the end of the scroll time. How did we do here? Well, it's not a crazy short show anyway. It's a 3-hour tour. It will be in 1 minute and 45 seconds. And I can take 1 minute and 45 to close this thing up and put a 3-hour tour to bed. Well, all right then. Well, first of all, as you know, the show is made possible by the members of BillWhittle.com. My skin is getting worse. I'm just perpetually dehydrated. I really need to have this whole thing repaved. And we're very grateful to the members, especially the new members. Veronica says, please hit the like button. That'd be nice if you're watching on YouTube. Thank you. The like button would be great. I'll be posting... Part 2 is already up on the Story Mechanics channel. Let me go grab that link so that you guys can have it. I should have probably put it up at the beginning, and if I was a little more savvy and not so overworked, I would have thought of this earlier. But let me do it now anyway. Here we go. This is the Story Mechanics page. There's 2 entries up there now. There will be 3 in an hour, and 4 by tomorrow. So I'm just editing and putting these things out and just going like crazy. Be your channel. There we go. So parts 1 and 2 are here. Part 3, the music is going up. Here you go. Bill needs to be more mercenary. Yes, I need to watch more Mark Dice. That boy promotes himself. Okay, and I think that'll probably do it. 3 hours. Okay, thanks. It was fun. It's great seeing everybody. Thank you very much. Yes, I did, Marusha. I got it. Thank you. It's on the reading list along with everything else. And it's great talking to everybody as usual. So we'll say goodnight to our friends on YouTube first. Thanks for joining us, YouTube. And we'll see you guys on Monday night on the Stratosphere Studio.